everybody's more or less ready, I think we will get started. So, good afternoon. I'm Denise Merrill, the Secretary of the State of Connecticut, and I'm very pleased to be with you here today. You are, I think, at the beginning of a wonderful new program, so you are the first ones to be part of this, the new Civic Ambassador Program. And I want to thank we have a lot of participating groups that have brought you here today. My sort of co-chair, I guess, Martha McCoy, will be speaking in a minute. She's the Executive Director of Everyday Democracy, bringing us together today. Also, I wanted to introduce, if you haven't met him yet, Steve Armstrong, who is here from the Connecticut Department of Education. That's Steve. Thank you. And the participating organizations are Hartford Decides, UConn Initiative on Campus Dialogues, Connecticut Parent Power, and the Connecticut Kid Governor. So why have we all come together here today? I think it's because we all care deeply about our communities. And it's no secret that the last year or two have seen a deep distrust in government and getting worse. And I think so now more than ever, we need high civic engagement and education about our government. And that's why you're here today, and that's why I'm here today. Because the Civic Ambassador Program fits hand in glove with other civic education programs. I've been working in civic education for over 30 years now, and I've done a lot of programs with students, with community groups, with parents, and I see a real need to grow programs from the ground up. And that's really what this is about. It's doubly important also, I think, to foster civic participation in young people. Young people are the inheritors of our society, and I always say every generation has to renew its commitment to our democracy and our society. And it's usually going to be in new and different ways, yet undiscovered. But I think the Civic Ambassador Program is special because it enlists community members to help interested people engage with local organizations in their own towns and cities. And it's more likely, I think, to be successful because it is locally centered. So the people that come forward today to train to be civic ambassadors are going to be the real superheroes, I think, because they're volunteering their time to help their community to make life better for everyone. Civic ambassadors we see as people who care so deeply about their communities and its health that they volunteer to get other people involved in the civic life of the community. The most important thing, I think, about this Civic Ambassador Program. So together, I hope we can make every community in this state stronger, more engaged, and more involved. And I'll be right with you along the way, doing everything I can to encourage and help the program grow. So you really are the experiment today. You're the beginning, and I can't wait to work with you. Thanks so much. And now I'd like to hear from Martha McCoy, my co-chair. Welcome, Civic Ambassadors. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Can I hear a good afternoon?
Good afternoon.
We're just thrilled that you are here today. We are here together today to inspire each other and to learn from one another about what it really means to have a state and communities in our state that support voice, participation, inclusion, and equity for everyone. That's really why we're here. And as the Secretary of State said so well, we cannot do that unless we are working together to encourage and inspire each other, because right now there are some forces that are working against us in terms of pitting people against each other, pitting public institutions and people against each other. There's a lot of mistrust. There are a lot of divides. But you, the people in this room, are going to be, and you already are, but you're going to be amplified. You're going to be the carrying agents of connection. And the more we can connect with each other and learn from each other and highlight the great things that are happening and amplify the great things that are happening through connection,
with each other, the more effective we'll be at making our communities great places where all kinds of people feel like they have a voice, they have a role. Our goal is to really help people of every racial and ethnic background, every income level, every education level, every language that's spoken, every gender, to really feel like I count in this state, I count in my community. And the Secretary of the State and I often say that the reason that most people participate in anything that is civic, in their community or their state, is that somebody asks them. So as ambassadors, we are going to continue to ask people and reach out to people and make them feel like, yes, this state, this community is your home, your voice matters, your participation matters, and together we're going to make that happen. So welcome. We are just so happy that you are with us today, and we're really honored that you are here for the Civic Ambassadors Program. So now I'll call up Val Ramos, who is Director of Strategic Alliances at Everyday Democracy and the catalyst for the Civic Ambassadors, has done so much work. So thank you, Val.
Buenas tardes. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Martha. Thank you, Secretary Merrill, for these welcoming remarks. I'm Val Ramos, Director of Strategic Alliances at Everyday Democracy. I want to apologize that my voice is not very good. I have a little bit of cold, so I'm going to try my best not to lose my voice in the rest of the day. But I want to thank all of you for being here today on this Saturday, which is especially a beautiful Saturday like today. So thank you all for being here. We are very fortunate, in fact, that Martha and Secretary Merrill alluded to the many partners that we have that have been part of this initiative, the Civic Ambassadors Program. And you can see all the logos here. And there's so many of them that I could not possibly mention all of them, but there's three in particular that have been very supportive, co-sponsoring this event. The UConn Hartford campus, the Hartford Public Library, and the UConn Humanities Institute. So I want to take this opportunity to welcome Mark Obermeyer Velasquez and Brendan Kane, who are going to do some brief welcoming remarks, and they represent the Hartford UConn campus and the UConn Humanities Institute. So please welcome them.
Muy buenos días. Aquí hablamos español. Good afternoon. How's everyone doing? Good. So I'm Mark Obermeyer Velasquez, the University Director of the University of Connecticut at Hartford. I've been on the job for a couple of months, and one thing that really excites me about being here is these kinds of collaborative spaces and moments to connect with community. And doing this kind of work in community, this civic engagement with our students, with people like you, is really what I want to make sure we at UConn Hartford do more and more of. So thanks to Val and to Brendan, the Humanities Institute, and this library. This library is really, for me, kind of the embodiment of this kind of work, right? A strong institution in a city that already has connections throughout, not just downtown Hartford, but throughout the city with the people who live and work here, and be part of that is critical. And I should say UConn Hartford, certainly it's our mission as a public research university to bring our students and our faculty and staff into conversation with these kinds of critical topics, especially as Secretary Merrill mentioned, especially today when we have such a toxic political environment. And then the notion of looking at the Civic Ambassadors pledge that it kind of really resonates with me and resonates with the work that we do on our campus, because we have programs like the program of public policy, Department of Public Policy, the School of Social Work, Urban and Community Studies, and faculty are doing work with our students in the community. So this focus on social justice and committing to transformative work to broaden and deepen their inclusion in democracy is really what I'm excited about. And thanks, it's an honor to support this work. So enjoy the day, thanks.
Diddley Carta, tá chéint go bin seo. I just figured if we're going to do all languages, one of the things I do in stores is I teach Irish Gaelic, so we're going to respect all languages today as well. Go full in. Well, welcome. It really is a great delight to be here, and really an honor. So thank you very much, Val, and also to my colleague Dana Miranda, who has been the person who's really led this with the Humanities Institute. So connecting the Humanities Institute of a research university to this kind of public-facing, sort of dialogic and civic event. And so let me tell you just really quickly about what the Humanities Institute is. For most of its 15 years or so, it existed actually to support people producing research in the humanities. And actually, in doing so, it was very much disconnected from the public, in the sense that it was a time for people to come away from their teaching or from their service requirements so that they could focus on completing a piece of academic research. But the reality is, I mean, I think as Mark, as a number of people already up here have said, that so many of the questions that affect us as individuals, but also as collective communities, are matters of the humanities. So as much as we talk about STEM at the university, which is obviously really crucial, but if you think about the questions that really plague us, or the challenges we face, so many of them about belonging and meaning and understanding and justice, those are the kinds of issues that humanists spend their entire lives working on. We have a whole body of people, students and staff and faculty at the university, up there in Stores by Horse Barn Hill, who spend their entire lives working on those issues. And as I always say to our students, I am your employee, we are your employees, we are taxpayer funded, and therefore people who are working on these kinds of questions should be so much more closely and dynamically engaged with communities facing those same challenges. And thus, the Humanities Institute has had the great fortune to be able to partner with Everyday Democracy. So for instance, we had went right from Everyday Democracy to a training yesterday with us, so absolutely honored about that. And we also have built a relationship with the Hartford Public Library, with the Wadsworth Athenaeum, and the Amistad Center, and now hopefully getting into conversation with the Old State House, so we can make sure that there are spaces for this kind of community dialogic work that are based upon sort of ideas and research, but also individuals and communities' questions. So, absolutely delighted to be here. Have a great time. I know I will.
And again, thank you, both of you, and the Yukon Hartford campus, and the Humanities Institute of Yukon as well, and the Hartford Public Library. So at this point, we're ready for our first panel, and we have some really distinguished panelists who are going to open the program today. I'm going to start introducing Diane Smith, who's going to be the moderator for this panel. Diane is an award-winning journalist, former television news anchor and producer, author, and media entrepreneur. Diane has been a part of the Connecticut Civic Skills project for many years, and most recently worked with CTN, doing production work for that network. So please welcome Diane Smith. The other first finalist will be also Kojima Ginsberg, Executive Director of the Center for Information and Research on Civic Learning and Engagement at Tufts University. She is also a renowned researcher and speaker. And the other panelist is Mark Abraham, Executive Director of Data Haven Incorporated, an independent research organization, and a researcher and speaker. Please welcome this panelist.
Okay, so raise your hands if you agree with this. Connecticut is a great place to live, work, and raise a family.
Yay.
I think we have unanimous approval on that, okay. I just don't think that's so. So why is that? Well, part of what makes our state so wonderful is its natural beauty, right? On a gorgeous Saturday like this, we really appreciate what we have here, from the sparkling water of Long Island Sound to the rolling hills in the Litchfield County, the hustle and bustle of the densely populated southwestern part of the state, to the serenity of the quiet corner in the northeastern part of the state. We are really blessed in this state with natural beauty. But Connecticut is so much more than that. Connecticut is a wealth of history and old ideas that led to the founding of this nation, and ideas that have built our towns and our cities and framed our style of local government. We are a state of inventors, a state of dreamers, a state of believers, a melting pot rich with ethnic diversity. And the truth is, most of what Connecticut is today is the result of civic engagement. Closely knit communities that come from a tradition of town hall meetings and working with neighbors to solve problems. So why is civic health important? Because it is the foundation of everything we cherish about this place we call home, the foundation of everything that is positively Connecticut. So thank you for being here today while we contemplate the question about civic health in Connecticut. We just give a little more detail on our panelists. Dr. Kojima Ginsberg, as we mentioned, is the director of the Center for Information and Research on Civic Learning and Engagement comes out to the lovely word CIRCLE at Tufts University, so we'll refer to it as that from now on. Before becoming the director of CIRCLE, Dr. Kojima Ginsberg was the lead researcher and deputy director. We know her because, among other things that she's authored, including CIRCLE reports such as Taking the Lead, How Educators Can Help Close the Gender Leadership Gap. Kay was the principal investigator for both of the Connecticut Civic Health Reports published in 2011 and 2016, so we thank you for that because that took us very far. Kay is especially interested in providing people, organizations, and communities with research that would help increase civic engagement and political engagement for diverse and especially marginalized youth, something that we've seen from our Connecticut Health Index that we really need to do, that particularly in getting young people registered and getting involved in political organizations and community organizations. We have a way to go there. So thank you so much, Kay, for that. Mark Abraham, right next to me, is the executive director of Data Haven Incorporated, located in New Haven. Data Haven is a public service nonprofit organization that partners with state and local government agencies, academic and healthcare institutions, foundations, and community organizations to collect, share, and interpret public information about Greater New Haven and about Connecticut. And his information was invaluable in the latest report on the civic health of Connecticut. I should say that Mark served as a fellow of the W.K. Kellogg Foundation in Battle Creek, Michigan, where apparently they make more than cereal. They also make civic engagement. He was part of a national cohort focused on racial equality. Mark graduated from Yale, and he was recently honored with an Impact Award from the International Community Indicators Consortium and was elected to the Executive Committee of the National Neighborhood Indicators Partnership. So we're very happy to have both of you here, and I'd like to give you some time to make your presentations. Kay, would you like to start?
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you so much, everybody, and it's an honor to be here. And I want to just say, before I start on my formal part of the presentation, that for my job, I go to Washington, D.C. a lot and talk about sort of the state of our democracy, and we talk about the people and what we need to do in the policies. But this is the place where the real action happens. I think we talk about these things at the national level as if it's happening in some wonderful place that we don't know. But I'm seeing that today, and I'm really excited, and I'm really excited about this collective impact that you can make as a group. So thank you for having me. So, the conversation I want to have today, is this not working? Yep. It's hard to say. Is really about reaching communities' potential through civic engagement and democratic participation. And I'll start my presentation with the takeaways, because I think it's always easier to know what I'm going to talk about. I really mostly want to talk about three things, mainly. One is that civic learning prepares students for life, not just for civic life, but life overall. Civic learning is more than laws and processes and Supreme Court cases, and I'll get into that a little bit more. And then finally, connected and engaged communities are resilient communities. I'll begin by talking about civic education in the United States. Sorry, there you go. When the public education system was established in the United States, one of the main reasons to do that was to prepare citizens to participate, contribute, and be part of civic life in the community and decide where this nation was going to go. So Horace Mann famously said, if we do not prepare children to become good citizens, then our republic must go down to destruction, as others have gone before it. I'm not going to ask you to raise your hand to say if that's actually happening now or not. But what's happened in the last few decades is this. We have generally disregarded civic education not as a main purpose of education, not an essential part of K-12 public school education, but a nice to have for students who come from certain communities, from certain families, who then go on to participate, while leaving a lot of young people behind, who have a different view of democracy today, who have a different attitude about participation. And we've done a great disservice. So, civic education needs renewal. Civic education in new era really demands that the students need to be informed, critical, and ethical citizens while also being ready for college and career. Can civic education do it all? It's obviously a large, daunting task. I argue that we have to, and if done right, yes we can. And I'll present the case example from service learning. I really need to learn how to use it. So service learning, for those who are not familiar with the terminology, is an approach to teaching and learning in which students use academic knowledge and skills to address genuine community needs. This is according to National Youth Leadership Council. The form of service learning can really vary from place to place and what students want to do. And of course, the quality makes all the difference. I want to get into a little bit about that later in the slide. But essentially, this is what service learning can do in an ideal way. First is that, first and foremost, service learning has to include learning about something in the subject. So if you're working, for example, with students in a community garden, that's a community service part of that, but students need to be learning something about, for example, plant life cycle, or maybe food desert, or how the nutrients in the dirt gets absorbed into the plants, and why different kind of nutrients make a difference, chemical. For example, there's a lot of things you can do there, but the academic discipline learning is an essential component of service learning, not just service. Second is academic engagement. And the research shows that whenever students can really get into hands-on activities, project-based learning, students tend to become more involved in the classroom, participate more. But the research shows a little bit more than that. Actually, when students are involved in service learning, they often stay in school too. And we can theorize a little bit, but what we hear more anecdotally and from qualitative studies is that the students can sometimes see the purpose of what they're doing in education. Once they really can address something in the community that they actually care about. And that becomes the rope that they hang on to when things get hard and when they really want to quit. The third is a career development. A lot of times when students go out to the community and oftentimes work with adults who are in the roles that may not be represented in their community, such as city officials or some kind of a professional person. And it's even better if it's somebody that looks like the kids, that are doing things that their parents didn't do, they didn't grow up seeing, so that they can see themselves in the future taking these leadership roles in their community and serving the community. So these are the important components of service learning. And its beautiful part is that it can do it all in just one sweep activity. That doesn't have to take the entire class. It doesn't necessarily even have to take a substitute teacher in the bus. To a lot of teachers. Now, the research shows quite a bit about civic learning in general can prepare students for life. First, I said academic engagement. One study that Circle produced in the past shows that the 8th grade service learning can help students achieve better scores in various subjects, including science, math, English, and social studies. And when the progress is looked at in the context of whether students have to volunteer to be in service learning activity or not, it doesn't seem to matter as much. There is some selection biases, but even when students are required to do service learning, they still retain these academic benefits. Second is academic engagement. As I mentioned, students who are in service learning are more likely to stay in school after service learning. And that's true several years after that. That's true to this study that I mentioned, but also a number of studies that are coming from Urban Debate League, which is kind of after school debate clubs that are happening in a lot of urban areas. I highly recommend it if you don't know about that. Third is the career development, and I talked about this already, and there's actually less research there as to sort of whether young people really do gain career skills, but the National Service alumni often talk about how the service experience in school led for them to do national service as a one-year commitment, and then through that experience, they gained to get into the workplace and then gain leadership, collaboration, communication, and so on that can really translate to the career place. And I said earlier that quality does matter. And when I combine all the research that's come out of civic learning field as research, there are several lessons we should really keep in mind. One is that whenever we are engaging students in civic activities, it's easy to just get them out to the community, well, not easy, but it's exciting to get them into the community and do the work with the people on the ground. But we have to remember, we have to balance academic learning with the community engagement and service. There's some indication that return on investment actually diminishes once you start to do more engagement than academic learning. It's also really important, especially in service learning, to explore the root cause of the community issues that they're exploring. It's not enough to just get them to serve in the food pantry. They have to wonder why the food pantry has to exist to begin with, and why these inequalities exist in the society. It's also important, according to the research, to really let students actually experience democratic life in classroom and school building, so that the students are starting to learn, as they learn about our democracy, that is what it feels like when it's done right. So it's about getting the student voice in the classroom and thinking about how the students can take a leadership in the student government and the governance of the school, and how teachers and adults and students and young people can form partnership genuinely, not just talking about young people as tokens. And finally, personalization. In this case, I mean personal cause, issues that are important to young people, is really important when we think about civic learning and engagement in general. We can't just talk about everything that's going on in Washington, D.C. It's of course relevant, but young people are likely to respond to something that's happening right in their schoolyard or in their street corner that eventually connects to our national issues, but has a real relevance to what they're doing and living and experiencing every day. So that's civic learning, and I think I want to show just one slide before I move out of the civic learning area. There's all these great research that's happening, but I want to point to the fact that inequality really applies here too. This is a graph showing the historical and current data on the NAEP civics achievement scores by family income, or family's education system attainment. And you see an enormous gap between those scores. And what the difference between these two essentially is that at the bottom level, students can kind of get through the very basic, what is the branches of the government, what are some of the famous Supreme Court cases, what is it supposed to be about? But nothing about really how young people and citizens in general can participate in democratic life and what kind of options they have when they have grievances with that. So there is a big difference, although this is just about the knowledge, but even in the knowledge gap, there's a difference in preparedness for civic life. So I will leave you with that question, hoping that you will solve this. And right? You're the ambassadors. The second topic I want to talk briefly is the networked communities, engagement, and recovery. This is about the study that I and my colleagues did at Sorbonne University of Wisconsin, along with NCOC, to look at the role of civic organization and people's connection with each other, what we researchers call social cohesion, and the local community during the Great Recession years, starting in 2008. We looked at sort of the data going forward from 2006 to 2010, essentially to look at whether the communities lost jobs, and if so, at what rate, based on the relationship to civic health. Again, with takeaways here first. We found essentially that nonprofits are economic linchpin in the community, and social cohesion, people's connection with each other and trust in each other and cooperation with each other, can really keep the job in the community. Here are some illustrated graphs and numbers here. Here is a state graph looking at states that are most connected in terms of social cohesion and least connected in terms of social cohesion. You can see at the beginning, before the recession, that these states performed pretty similarly in terms of unemployment rate, around 4 to 5%, and then after that they started to depart. By 2010, not quite at the end of the recession, as far as I know, there were 2 percentage point difference in the employment rate statewide. So you can actually see how that's a huge difference if you think about that. This is another graph here looking now at the counties. We really wanted to make sure this finding held at different levels using different kinds of indicators. So we looked at it again and controlled for things like communities well. And we found the same thing, if not bigger differences, between the counties that showed most social cohesion and also the nonprofit density, and communities that had few nonprofits in the community. This particular graph shows the difference between the communities that are densely populated by nonprofits and those that are not, that don't have the same levels of nonprofit infrastructure. By 2009, the unemployment rate in the least nonprofit dense communities was 12.0% on average. And on the contrary, the most nonprofit dense communities had an unemployment rate of 6.2, almost unaffected actually by the recession. We also found that it mattered what kind of nonprofit community, nonprofit organizations people had in the community. These graphs are impossible to read, but I will point that at the top part of it are the kind of organizations that allow people to bond with each other. Those are things like Rotary clubs, recreation clubs, places where people have to actually put in their time to be part of it. It's not really all about kind of getting things done, but also about getting to know each other. We weren't able to actually look at the religious congregation because that's not part of the nonprofit data per se, but I would just think that they may have similar kind of effect, but that's a pure hypothesis, unfortunately. On the other hand, professionalized organizations that are like research organizations that are nonprofit, and unfortunately, universities in general, not on average, some probably do have very good benefit, aren't actually positively beneficial to the community. So, why are some of these things, why are these relationships exist? There are several hypotheses, some of which we can back up, some of them are a little bit more hypothetical. One is the skills. When we have a lot of opportunities through nonprofit and good civic education for young people to become involved and start to build these skills that I talked about, career skills, maybe the workforce is more ready. And there are a lot of ways in which the more competent communities can keep their businesses and keep their employees, right? When the communities are really connected with each other, meaning they trust each other, they actually talk to neighbors, they help each other out, the information spreads more quickly. Hey, I heard there's a job opening up around this nonprofit or that business, and they talk to each other, and the jobs are kept in the community. That's true to the network too. But in this case, we're talking about the network between organizations and companies. When nonprofits can collaborate with each other, their operations become more efficient, and therefore nobody goes down. And people are kept in the job. And when the more citizens can be engaged, and more broad and diverse kinds of young people and citizens can become engaged in the governance of the city, meaning they come to the town hall meetings, they call the representatives, then we believe, and research shows us somewhat, the decision-making and the policies that come out of that kind of participation is much more inclusive of the people who they're actually supposed to serve, as opposed to the volunteers that always come to those town hall meetings. I may be looking at some of you, but the idea is that many other people should be doing that. And citizens' work is important in that whenever there are small problems or even big problems in the neighborhood, it's important that citizens can actually resolve them before having to involve some big to-do, whether it's a city hall, a lawsuit, or some other company, right? There are many things we can do as citizens just working together. And finally, the research actually shows this. When young people are more engaged in the community, meaning higher number of people are engaged in communities, volunteers, and connected to some sort of organizations, people tend to be more proud of the communities they live in. They take responsibility for what happens to them. They help each other out. And that research actually shows that sort of community pride and affinity is connected to the growth in GDP for that community. So there are lots of reasons there. And I will close by just saying, you know, I think one of the beautiful things about building civic health is that it takes everybody to do that. It's not something that we can just sort of give it to school. It's not something we can give it to civic organization. But it's really important to build an ecosystem where everybody contributes and are working together to make sure that wherever that young people or citizens are, they're covered. They have access to civic life rather than being left there hanging all by himself or herself, trying to figure out what to do to make the community better. So I'll close here. Thanks for your attention.
Presentation, I just wanted to have Kate clarify a couple of things for people who may not know exactly what you mean by the term social cohesion.
Oh yeah. So when we talk about social cohesion, actually there's various definitions, and in our study we use various indicators. In our particular case, we looked at data on things in the census data, which you may actually see in the Civic Health Index too, around trusting your neighbors, working on a community problem with your neighbors, and trusting neighbors and doing favors to neighbors. So these are the kind of things that are really about the people-to-people connection. Other kinds of researchers also talk about social cohesion as kind of the ability for citizens to look out for each other. So sometimes it's really about making sure that that kid is not doing anything terrible, and if mom finds out when something is going on. That's the kind of communities that are socially cohesive.
Thank you. Mark? One thing I didn't mention about Mark when I was introducing him is that he has 50,000 followers to his personal Twitter account. If you'd like to become a follower, @UrbanData. 50,001.
Thank you for having me, and it's been really a pleasure. Civic Health Index since 2016, and a lot of related research. I'll be talking about research. But first I want to talk about a certain amount of experience with civic participation. So I have 3 boys, those are the boys on the right, and some of the things we do now include going to the library all the time, just right down the street. Right down the street, there's also like a food pantry where we get the kids to stuff backpacks. And first it was just me and a 6-year-old. We'd like put some stuff in backpacks. Actually credit goes to my wife for getting that set up. But we go there, and then like his friends started coming on, and then more and more kids, like 5, 6-year-olds, started coming on having backpacks for the school. So, and then before the reason I'm interested in data even and research on neighborhoods is I used to do a lot of kind of community organizing and architecture around the environment. Take over a street and like cover it with chalk with kids, and then hand out cookies to drivers who came by, which could be, we don't necessarily recommend it because sometimes drivers didn't notice we were there, so you have to do very carefully giving out cookies. It's the way to sort of take back streets, like a street, traditionally streets were run as like a public place, closed by buildings, and then, as cars get bigger and faster, it's just sort of a place where cars go through as quickly as possible. So the street is really one of the primary dynamics of civic places where civic life takes place. In fact, there's a lot of really interesting research if you're interested in urban planning. Some of the ways I got into it was reading this research about like people who lived on quieter streets, like controlling for other factors, had like a lot more friends and people that they knew. So just the idea that busy streets, it's just hard, louder and harder to get outside. There's also research showing if you're on a busy street, you don't use the rooms like in the front part of your house because it's closer there, so people sort of retreat actually literally into their homes. So I was doing that, and the difference is also like before I had kids, I'd go to like galas or fundraisers, and $75 a ticket for that, and then we sort of go to like neighborhood events that are $3 or $5 for a grilled cheese sandwich, that sort of thing. So a lot of things have changed. 3 boys. But I want to point that out. So data-driven, again, our goal is really to measure a lot of these issues at the neighborhood level. Like we all know, most adults in Connecticut think Connecticut's a great place to raise children and all that, but I'll show some data later showing in some neighborhoods like the percentage of adults who feel that way is much, much lower, actually. So the idea that even if you're in a booming economy like San Antonio or some sort of booming city, there's still neighborhoods that are really seeing people leave and flee and houses falling apart or being demolished entirely. So just that difference within the city is really interesting if you're trying to plan any sort of program, like a youth program, education, health, all these things that we look at often. You have to understand how those neighborhoods are changing, and neighborhoods have to be able to then organize and advocate for improvements so they're not left behind. So that's really our goal. We seek to use data to advance policy, work on a lot of national and state projects on that, and we try to, not just produce new research and reuse all the existing data that's out there, which is really overwhelming sometimes, but also to increase the public's usability and literacy of data through trainings and outreach in the communities and partnership building. So our partnerships include about 50 organizations are funders, so it's universities, hospitals, most of the major cities, most philanthropy in Connecticut. These are just some reports we've written recently. If you want to look on our website, they're all free, as well as like a lot of the underlying data you can go download for like a or something, or an area you're interested in, and ctdatahaven.org is the website if you'd like to do that. The Civic Health Index is a report we wrote with Everyday Democracy and others, and that was with me, Erica Kennedy, and Mary Buchanan, my co-authors, I think, in 2016. So the last project was a digital studies of that work. But I wanted to start just with some really quick slides. This may be like a lot of overwhelming information. But one of the things that I'm most concerned about, as I mentioned, is inequality. And one way you can think about it is this is how long people are living, right? And their life expectancy. You can see when there are people born in 1920, they live shorter lives than people born in 1950. So in general, like the US and other countries, we're seeing an increase in life expectancy. The increase in life expectancy in the US is much slower than some of the other countries that are wealthier or not even less wealthy countries, but nevertheless, people are living longer. But what you see here is the differences by income level. So you can see the poorest adults, especially poor women with lower incomes, they're actually living shorter lives over time. Wealthier women and wealthier men are living much longer lives, so actually almost 90 years old for wealthier women born in the 1950s, and you can see that's a pretty concerning difference. So that's kind of a striking thing that we found. And also, if you think about it from a neighborhood perspective, like how people are distributed. In the 1970s, I think wealthy and lower income people lived in pretty close proximity in Connecticut and even closer before that. But there's just been a segregation by income. So wealthy people are tending to live more in very wealthy neighborhoods. And I think as, this is something that may not be that thought of in Connecticut because on the whole, the state is an extremely wealthy state. You can see a Human Development Index, which is just looking at income, education, and longevity or life expectancy. Connecticut is up here with Germany and Sweden. It's the #1 ranked state in the United States. And also, if you think of the 300 biggest cities in the world, Hartford and Bridgeport are in the top 10. This is the metro area, so the towns right around Hartford, the towns right around Bridgeport, they have the highest GDP in the country. Boston is also up there in the top 10. And then, so the state's very wealthy, but if you break it down and look at income inequality, the income inequality is very high, and it's similar to Boston and New York. And we have a very strong middle class, so if you look at sort of the average worker, in the middle, the median income is high, but there's also a very wealthy population in Connecticut, so it's very income inequality in that sense. But also, if you look at the lower income adults versus high income adults, this is Bridgeport, Stanford, that's Fairfield County, that's the top rated metro area in income inequality. You can see the 20th percentile household earns $30,000 a year, and the 95th percentile earns about $600,000 a year, so it's a pretty dramatic difference. There's 5% of the population earning more than that amount there. We've read the paper about this, about concentrated poverty and wealth, so it's not just that adults with lower incomes are concentrated in some areas, but very wealthy adults are much more concentrated in sort of isolated areas in Connecticut than we are in the rest of the country. And what this does is, we have concerns that the interests of people would diverge. So if you're in one neighborhood, you're interested in certain things, like certain laws, policies. If you're in another neighborhood, you're interested in other. In the past, people sort of agreed that you need, highways, you need roads, schools, public transportation, all those things. Now that may be changing, and people are much more split up by income. So that's a concern. Something like eliminating the estate tax, which has come up in the Senate, that policy makes a lot of sense if you're living in a neighborhood where it's all states, everyone is in the top 0.1% as well. Maybe it makes sense as a policy too, but maybe would not have ever passed. One thing that really is important in understanding this is the legacy of discrimination in the U.S. There's basically 400 years of state violence, particularly against African Americans in the country. And 400 years, those disparities don't just disappear with the end of slavery, with the civil rights laws. The research shows that there's still very deep levels of discrimination in society. Even after those laws have been passed, people still support exclusion and that sort of thing. And this is just a map of Hartford showing, this is actually written into your deed if you buy a house in parts of West Hartford, and the person, any race other than the white race could use the land. So that was that particular law was made illegal in the civil rights era, but it was still on the books, and the legacy that is many people experienced could have moved to those neighborhoods in the 40s, 50s, other people could not. So you saw this difference in sort of where people are and what sort of wealth they could acquire over time. There are many other factors that you'll learn about in history class, like you can get Social Security, retirement, you can go to college for free, all those sorts of things. They didn't, equally to all people. Some people can get those benefits, other people cannot. This is the result of that. So systematically preventing one race from accumulating wealth for hundreds of years and not rectifying that will lead to a permanent wealth disparity. And that's like wealth in your housing, owning a car. Can you transfer wealth to acquire a college degree or a graduate degree? All those things are like very much associated with wealth, much more than any other factor. So what you see is the difference in wealth over time. People who are in the 50s and 60s currently, that's this generation, who were born in the 1940s to the early 50s, the wealth difference is pretty dramatic. In the Latino chart, you can see it actually went up as this generation reached the 50s and 60s in age, but then dropped, and that was really due to the housing crisis. A lot of Latinos were able to purchase homes in the 2000s, but in 2007, as you know, the home values plummeted, so that's why you see that drop there, especially impacting Latino. So that's just a really important context, I think, for understanding all the data that we see about Connecticut. One of our purposes is to work to unify measurements in the state. So really like thinking of all the raw materials or data out there, integrating them into a useful product. So different reports and things, and developing as many organizations as possible. And that is important. This is the Community Wellbeing Survey, which has about 5,200 in Connecticut. It's a very large neighborhood level survey, and we interview about 20,000 randomly selected adults. We actually go talk to people, have an in-depth interview with about 20,000 adults who are randomly chosen. So each interview is like a person's life story. So the reason we do that is like a lot of this information about civic health, about health issues, healthcare access, transportation. You can get some of that from the census, but a lot of the time the census will collect data at the state or the national level. To get it locally, you have to go out and do your own survey. So that's what we have done. And what it does is allow like cross-sector measurement across different topics. So we basically want to see which topics would most affect your well-being or your quality of life. And those would include civic satisfaction, or like optimism in community, some trust in neighbors, and your personal relationships, health outcomes, which is, our attitude to whether you're healthy, that determine if you're healthy, as well as employment and food and housing security sort of access. So in other words, if you're basic needs that way, and if you think your job is like suited to your skills and all that, those things all have a big impact on quality of life, much more than just income alone. If you just look at people's income, it's like predict some of the differences in how happy and satisfied people are in life, but not as much as these other factors. So this is, having a large survey like this really lets you look at this, and then having a common outcome. We ask people if they're happy, are they satisfied with their life, do they have like meaning and purpose in their life, and that's something that other countries outside the U.S. do, so they can sort of unify all the different work taking place. In the United States, unfortunately, the census just asks you, your income and if you own a house and that sort of thing. So this adds a lot of richness to the information. And these are just some of the information you can find would be like how happy people are based on their commute times. So if you control for income, it shows people who have a long commute, they have to earn about $50,000 more to be as happy as someone with a short commute. So just kind of teasing folks out there who have a long commute, but that is it takes time away from other things that you might do. Access to information, which would be like how many people have smartphones, computers at home, cell phones, but no internet or none. And we often, if you're living in a fairly well-off or middle-class neighborhood, almost everyone there has a computer and a smartphone. You think they're kind of okay. And in parts of the state, though, especially where incomes are strained, people may have a smartphone and a limited data plan. So we're thinking about reaching people in civic life, like through voting or filling out job applications or those sorts of things we get to consider. And not everyone has that resource of information, even though we sort of assume sometimes that they do. And the libraries obviously are places we would come for that to solve that. The well-being score also lets you basically put a dollar value to each increase in how happy people are, because we know that income has some impact on how happy people are. But one of the things that most impacts would be something like
Mark, no money can't buy happiness. We all know that.
So money does somewhat, but there's other things too. You can put this trust in neighbors variable, for example. It has a 6 compensating differential. So in other words, if you take someone who strongly disagrees that they can trust people and move them to a neighborhood where they can strongly agree they trust everyone, it's equivalent in terms of like life satisfaction to a 6 times increase in their income. So that, and you could put dollar values to everything: walkability, food security, hunger. Some of these things really have a big impact on people's lives. So the Civic Health Report is, again, the one I mentioned earlier, and we go through like really quick findings from that. There's the overall findings which show Connecticut as a whole on these measures from the census. They have, Connecticut scores pretty well. This is one way to kind of show the rankings. You can see Connecticut is the blue bar, and it's in the middle between, Utah and Louisiana and some of the things. So this just is the way to break it down. Again, you can get this report on the website if you haven't looked at it. And one of the biggest determinants in terms of something like voting is age, as I'm sure you've all talked about in these meetings, but there's a big difference in participation in voting by age, so that the report kind of documents that. It shows, however, that young people are just as likely to use the internet to express opinions. So maybe there's, as they become older, they'll hopefully translate that into moving from opinions to taking action in terms of voting. There's also differences by race and ethnicity, which I think a lot have to do with the different age of the different populations. So the white population being much older, so you'll see more white voters and votes. Irrespective of age, there are also differences, like I mentioned earlier, that are specific to race. People who are moving frequently because they're more likely to be renters, because of all the issues we talked about before, and others. So those play a role in the education that we talked about earlier. But there's large differences by education level. I think that's where you see people may feel they're not able to participate or get as much out of it as someone with more education. So there's some large differences there, and that can be addressed through thoughtful planning of public events and participation. And then the survey also looks at how confident people are in institutions, which I think is a really interesting question, especially now that people are sort of somewhat confident with, our corporations trustful, media trustful. They're much more confident if their local public schools are, at least to be somewhat trusted some of the time, is about 88%. And then we have some other questions from our survey on whether people feel they can influence local government or trust the police, and that's again where you see, when you look within the state, you see really big differences, so it's important to think about what those might be and what's causing those differences. And then this was the thing I mentioned earlier about, do you think your neighborhood is a good place to raise children? It's pretty high here across different groups, including by race, but where we see the large differences are here by community type. If you ask people in wealthy suburban neighborhoods in Connecticut, 95% agree that their neighborhood is a good place to raise children. And urban centers is much lower, but particularly in certain zip codes within the cities, it's a much lower rate of that. And that, is something that, to improve quality of life for everyone, there has to be policies to fix that condition. And I'll leave you with the note on the census. The 2020 census is under threat. All the information that you see up there is just kind of based on having an accurate count and counting everyone, regardless of whether they're a renter or a homeowner. Unfortunately, pretty much all that is under threat right now, so I just wanted to make that point that without an accurate census, a lot of this work that we do is going to be extremely challenging in the next decade. So, leave you with that note. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to give us a few extra minutes. We started a little bit late, so I'm going to give us about a little under 10 minutes to ask questions. I'm going to start with one to you, Mark. You mentioned how Connecticut is very segregated by income, particularly segregated into neighborhoods. And we see the map of Connecticut, we see 169 different towns, and we know that some of those towns are much wealthier than others. You compare, for instance, income in Fairfield County, Stamford, Norwalk versus Bridgeport. So we saw the 95th percentile, and I think it was the 20th percentile. If Connecticut were to revert to county government, where Stamford and Norwalk and Bridgeport would have some of the same things in common, like you said, the idea of building roads, building community centers, would that mitigate it somewhat and make that civic engagement more likely among those two type of communities where wealth is so different?
Yeah, that's a challenging question because, as you know, a lot of this depends on civic engagement. So even if you have a government that covers everything, you still need people to rally, to organize. But I think what county governments can sometimes be better at is equalize funding. So what we found in our reports was in Danbury, the city government spent $27 per person on the library system. In Greenwich, the government spent $192 per person on the public library. So that's something that's sort of basic resources. That a county government, could begin to address that, but it assumes that the county government has participation from people to then, fight for those sorts of changes. So it's a very difficult question.
Do we have questions from the audience? Yes, sir.
So why should the emphasis be put more on areas that need it most as opposed to areas that already are in a pretty good shape?
For me, yeah, that, I agree with the question. I mean, I think it's much better to have, everyone be able to reach their full potential, so to have library hours be open on weekends, regardless of what neighborhood you live in, that seems like a valid goal for me. But if you live in a town like Greenwich, you may not recognize that as a concern, just given, what's around you. So.
Okay, presuming that Connecticut's not going to revert to the county form of government, which was abolished a number of years ago, what are the answers in terms of getting higher levels of civic engagement in the communities where people are less educated and have less wealth?
I think even with county government, there's always going to be loopholes. Some of the empirically supported strategies, like integrating schools, for example, across racial lines, know that it gets achievement high for everyone, or nobody does it, right? So there's always a ways in which civic life tends to work, which is that whenever we ask for opinion from the public, those engaged public shows up, and those are the people that don't necessarily think of everybody's needs. But when we think about making civic engagement more even inclusive, I think it's really about making it truly affordable. Sometimes when we ask for volunteers, we don't really think about what else they need to do in the day or whether they have 3 other jobs. And for young people, I often feel really terrible about some of the college programs that do a really great job engaging, transforming young people as civic actors, but instead they can't then work because they're asking them to dedicate 15 hours of their time, right? So I don't really believe in volunteerism as something that you have to be paid for. I really think there should be ways in which people are compensated for their time, especially if that's really what we want. So that would be one item.
Questions? Yes. Can you speak up just a little bit?
Be conscious of numbers and gaps and that collectively with other experts in doing this type of work. What I want to know is, because in order for you to engage change and to get people to get out of the chair, they need to know there's a problem. And if they're really busy trying to bring home, I don't know, bacon, they may not be aware. So I think the information the marketing and all the documents that we presented today is critical. So I'm just wondering, is there anyone who can know that someone saying, well, here's it, and going around and then informing people, you need to get up and do something for yourself and for your children. And then I have a question for Ms. Ginsberg too, related to the service fund that she was speaking of, that initiative. Is that something that you did a study in your department? Are there states that are making a great deal of that initiative and bringing it forward? Because it seems to that could be implemented.
Sure. Yeah. So on the first question, we are much more effective if we partner with someone with like a bigger reach in the community. So we talked about which organizations would have that kind of reach. So we've written several reports with like the NAACP, for example, which is a community-based organization focused on civil rights for African Americans, Latinos, and they've written all sorts about these economic issues. So we sort of worked for many years to meet with their whole staff and team, and then they published the report, and then they were the spokespersons for that, so they're on TV and meeting with the mayor, so that's much more effective. Mayor or like a bigger reach in the community than we can. So that's kind of our overall approach that I think is most effective, but we do need a lot of assistance from communities to also tell us like, how can we go out and reach people who should we talk to and share this information with. So we're open to please sending emails.
People with the buttons, civic ambassadors. So we need to recruit more. Hey, about the service line?
Yeah, and I think I actually have a question for you. So there's a red, white, and blue schools in Connecticut right now. So I'm assuming that one of the things that schools can do to really earn that honor is to really do a great job of doing things like service learning. So I think that sort of recognition is really important, and incorporating some good practices and making sure they're recognized for that kind of good practices is one key. But state of Illinois, for example, is doing that statewide now. It's one of the things that the new civic education law kind of mandates every school
students to do by the time they graduate from high school. And they also require civics course. And that's taken a lot of really people like you's work actually over 7 to 8 years of advocacy. It's really citizens' work that really eventually passes along. So I
We have 2 minutes left of this panel, so we have time for one more question. Any question? No?
There was a time where students would learn more by doing it, more like a service learning approach, where they used portfolios and diversified learning opportunities in the classroom. And with all of the political movement towards standardized tests, we've really lost that authenticity of our students really bringing in not only their whole self, but their culture, their roots of where their upbringing came from, and really having those deep, meaningful conversations in the classroom environment. So as I'm listening to the data, and I'm listening to your service learning vision, how can we become more intentional as civic ambassadors in our community to align this approach, to bring the stakeholders, leaderships from superintendents of schools, principals, to teachers, to parents, and diversified immigrants that are really in it on a daily basis, that are coming across those natural isms, to really eradicate the harm that it's really doing in the larger picture. Because as we look at the census, you know, and I know that our immigrant families are afraid to disclose anything nowadays. So if we're not going to get real information, real data to drive best practice, how do we align what we have and take that as a learning step to move forward?
I think one of the openings that I actually know about Connecticut is it's a leader in personalizing learning and proficiency and competencies of the learning with the passage of ESSA. I think that's a really strong leverage where people could be talking about how this kind of learning that engages people of all backgrounds, take advantage of the assets, for example, different languages kids can bring to working on the community, can actually be a way to sort of get into different kinds of stakeholders that care about maybe not just civic outcomes, but also maybe solely academic achievement outcomes or retention in school. So oftentimes advocacy is really about trying to think about what do other people think is important? What do the work that we do can contribute to their purposes and their mission? And I think there's a lot of opening now in Connecticut.
I was just going to say, like, just listening to parents and communities, like, integrating them into the decisions making in each school would go a long way. There's a lot of, like, mandates to do certain things, but ultimately the parents and the communities can really make big changes in terms of, like, what is being done in school, and then hopefully feeding it up to support policies that would also allow that funding for those sorts of things.
I want to thank both of our panelists for being here today. Dr. Ginsberg and Mark Abraham, it's been a pleasure having you enjoy being recipients of your work over the years as well. So thank you so much for coming today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you again, Diane, Mark, and Kay. And we're going to take a 3-minute break. There's some coffee in the back, and if you have to go to the restroom, please try to rush as we get started next time right away. 3 minutes, thank you. Okay, and we're very fortunate to have today a group of people who are very involved in the communities and campuses, doing good work using dialogue and deliberation, community conversations. And dialogue is a great way to engage community residents, build community, and to work together to solve problems locally. So we're fortunate today to have a great panel. And please help me welcome the 2 moderators, Richard Frieder, who is Principal of Community Capacity Builders, and formerly used to be Civic Engagement Director for the Hartford Public Library for many years. He's also a Senior Associate with Everyday Democracy. And also Dana Miranda, who is the Director of the Initiative in Campus Dialogues at UConn. He's a graduate student there. He's also involved in other programs related to the humanities at UConn. We also have here one of our panelists, Giselle, who is a pastor but also works with the Hartford Faith-Based Initiative in Hartford. And we have 2 young people, Ariana Diaz and Taylor Thompson, both of them very involved in campus-based dialogue. So please help me welcome Mr. Rick Palmer.
So Val, I'm not young, huh?
So hello everyone. So we'll have less time than normal, but it's going to be around 25 minutes, maybe pushing to 30 if we're lucky, rather than 40 minutes. So it's going to be a much more streamlined process. So once again, I want to thank Val for introducing us. My name is David Francisco Miranda. I'm a PhD student in philosophy at the University of Connecticut, and I'm also heading with my lovely colleague, Brendan Kane, on the Initiative on Campus Dialogue. So this initiative is really focused on how do we use dialogue to create infrastructural and sustainable change, both on campus and within our community. Because one thing that's often forgotten is that universities are a part of the community. So even though it seems that universities are oftentimes focused on themselves and what will happen to them, we believe at UConn that we are a part of a community and we want to use dialogue, all of we communication with it. So with that being said, I'll let River introduce himself and then our panelists.
Thank you, Dana. Good afternoon, everybody. I am Richard Breeder. I do community engagement work, mostly in Hartford, working independently under the name Community Capacity Builders. I work on a variety of initiatives in Hartford, including a participatory budgeting initiative called Hartford Decides. We could spend this whole session talking about participatory budgeting. It's a really wonderful thing. And dialogue is a key part of that. I also work with the Hartford Books Coalition, with Hartford 2000, which is the umbrella organization for Hartford's 13, I think. I need to count neighborhood revitalization zones. And I'm a senior associate with Everyday Democracy, where I have helped work in collaboration with the American Library Association, helping librarians learn how to do community engagement, and also with Everyday Democracy working on a project, a New England-wide project helping school districts learn how to do community engagement. I'm really delighted to say that I now have a fellowship with the University of Connecticut Humanities Institute, so we're Clinton and Dana. And the thrust of my fellowship is about community dialogues also. So there's a lot more I can say, but I want to sneak in a quick story here because it kind of sets the context for why and how I got into community dialogues. As Val mentioned, I worked here at the Hartford Public Library as the community engagement director for 15 years until about a year and a half ago. And I organized many public programs, many of them took place in this room, on various community issues, whether education or economic development or property taxes or public safety. And for the most part, they were really good, if I do say so myself. We usually got a good crowd here, a lot of exchange of information, some discussion, and then everybody went home. And I found myself thinking, after doing this for a few years, well, what happens after everybody goes home? Are we having any impact? Are we making any kind of difference? And I started to think about how we could continue here at the library to do this kind of work, but to help people get to action, really, to help people get to action with their issues. And it was then that I discovered Everyday Democracy, the organization Everyday Democracy. And their primary tool is community dialogues and a process that they refer to as dialogue to action or dialogue to change. And I started doing that work here at the library in collaboration often with Everyday Democracy. And it was by doing that I made that transition of doing great informational programs to taking another step beyond that and helping people get to action. So that's sort of the context of how I got into community dialogues, and we'll talk more about all of that. But I'll leave it there for now.
So right now, we'll just have the panelists introduce themselves rather briefly, and then we'll move on with some questions.
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Eli Ricardo, Associate Pastor at Light Worship Center here in the city of Hartford. Also the chairman for the Faith-Based Initiative here in the city of Hartford as well. And also lead the Know Thy Neighbor initiative here in the city, which we'll talk a little bit about among the various hats that I wear here in the community. So it's great to be here.
Hi, my name is Ariana Diaz. I'm a senior at the University of Connecticut, as well as an ICD fellow intern. I study global studies and English, as well as human rights and Middle Eastern studies. And in my work directly with ICD, I work with Professor Brunel on immigrant narratives from Connecticut's West Indian diaspora.
Hi everybody, my name is Taylor Thompson. I'm also a senior at the University of Connecticut. I'm a double major in history and political science, and I'm also an ICD, which is the Initiative on Campus Dialogue intern. And I got involved with the ICD dialogues because of my interest in political science and in politics in general, and specifically in how public policy affects marginalized groups.
All right, thank you, panelists. So the first question we have is, what made you want to engage in dialogue work or participate, or what training have you had in dialogue work?
So for me, when I think about this question, and I think it is probably to childhood when I think about what made me engage in it. For me, it's really just growing up here in the city of Hartford. When I think about the struggle as a young kid growing up, the disengagement of neighborhoods and resources throughout the city, just seeing the struggles that we went through encouraged me to make a change. I've been blessed to be in this position, and I said, how can I give back? How can I help make a difference to the community at large? Many times there are great resources and great things happening, and a lot of times the people that need it the most don't know where to go, or they even exist. So how can I help bridge the gap of resources and support with community residents that truly need it? So for me, it was more on how can I bring others up, show people that we could break the generational curses that amount to something, and we could truly be individuals of change in our community. So those are some of the things I think deep inside that encouraged me to really get involved with this type of work. So.
Being an immigrant myself, I've always been very interested in personal migrant narratives, and through my studies I've been able to develop this in an academic sense. And this project allows us to promote migrant communities' legacy in both a historical sense and a contemporary application by granting them a voice and influence over their own narratives, allowing how they can portray themselves in our society. So that really interests me.
So I've taken part in a couple, actually helped facilitate a couple dialogues that we've done so far. One of them was with the Encounter series, which was Encountering One Person. It was on the Gospel of Wealth by Andrew Carnegie, and it happened right here at the Hartford Public Library a few weeks ago. I was also a facilitator in a discussion on public education in the 21st century. That was for the National Issues Forum, and that was held last week. We had Conard High School from West Hartford and E.O. Smith from Mansfield who were there, and we partook in that conversation that I helped facilitate. I also was able to observe some of the planning and organization behind this year's on-campus metanoia, which is a day devoted to university change discussion. And I think that all of these things have, while discussing different things, have really been important and useful to me in my academic life, as well as with family and friends, and discussing political issues because of the need to have a shared foundation to build off of when talking about really difficult conversations and divisive issues. So I think that seeing the benefit that these dialogues have brought to having discussions, being able to really listen to one another without coming into arguments or violence has been really helpful in my everyday life.
I would like to definitely to add as far as community dialogue, just a slight intro. So one of the main ones that I'm focused on right now is the Know Thy Neighbor initiative. And this came about when the current Hartford police chief came to me, Chief Val, and said, hey, this is a pilot that's happening, or something that's happening in the city. How do we pilot this in the city of Hartford? And we had some discussions, and there was no movement. It was more on, let's do this together, and then begin to kind of lay the foundation for the Know Thy Neighbor initiative. Currently, we're in 2 neighborhoods, and the Armstrong neighborhood, and also the Frog Hollow neighborhood. Each neighborhood has team leaders as well, and it's a group of community residents that come together every other week, along with the police department, the fire department, AMR, St. Francis, Trinity Health, different organizations that have come to the table just to work together. And the purpose is really to strengthen and build relationships within the community, houses of worship, public safety, etc. And we work in this action-oriented dialogue that we have as well. So we've had some great successes through these community dialogues.
Thank you all. I wanted to ask, you've all had some experience with community dialogues of one kind or another. Can you talk a little about, let's start with successes. We know there are other things too, but what has gone well, or what can you build on? What's happened that you can build on?
So, great question. So when I think about successes, that I talked a little bit earlier, like bridging the gap, right? One of the things was that the community came together and said, how do we get resources to the community? So one of the things that we did was, through the planning stages, we had a community resource fair. We had over 20 organizations that we partnered with, different organizations that know why as well. And literally, I think it started at like 1, by like 11:30, 12 o'clock, we had at least 100 people waiting at the door, which was a great thing because we got the word out there and people were encouraged to connect with organizations to be blessed. So from that day, it's really how do we carry the momentum over, and it's continued to, we captured information for those individuals that were there, and then there was a follow-up piece to that that continued to engage these residents. So they see that this is not just an initiative that is just here today and gone tomorrow, but yet we're here to stay. So it's continuing on that type of momentum. So.
Within my work, I specifically analyzed archival documents in both newspapers and governmental documents on West Indian migrant workers around 1910 to 2010. And with that, we also paired with the community archive, migrant narratives within the community themselves, so they're personal stories. Before, these have been very distinct, and because of that, we've never had a clear, compact story of these actual migrant workers. So that our archive has become an activist space and also one for community dialogue, in which narratives on immigration, what used to be incomplete, and emphasize different people, such as government workers over the migrant workers themselves. From that, we create an opportunity to promote community voice and influence how archives are organized, who accesses them, and ultimately which stories are told, and how the community gets to tell their own stories. So that's been very successful.
So I think some of the best things that I've seen so far with being involved in the dialogues has been actual listening, really engaged listening going on, actually devoting time for each individual to have a time to speak and everyone has to listen. I found this to be kind of a challenging exercise as well as really rewarding. It seemed like while doing these different dialogues, there were plenty of people who were thinking about what they were going to say next, and I could kind of see these things like happening in their head before they were, or while they were supposed to be listening to others. So I think that as we kind of worked through that process and we're trying to really listen to one another, we start to break down some barriers with how we immediately judge and see each other. So I think that has been especially beneficial in bringing together different types of people to talk about issues where they might come from very different standpoints.
If I could definitely add to that, one of the things that I have written down here is one of the favorite quotes that I like is people don't know how much you care, how much you know until they know how much you care. So people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care, right? So in these dialogues, just the fact that residents feel like, oh, my voice is being heard. For a long time, my voice was not being heard. So they weren't coming to the table with individuals and organizations that could help bring change. So through these dialogues, they feel more empowered that, you know what, I could speak up and collectively we'll work together to find solutions to community concerns.
Thank you guys for that. So one of the things we would love to have is much more conversation about each of your individual works, but unfortunately we're running low on time. So we do want to open up this dialogue to the audience. So one thing, we have an opening question, but feel free, if you have questions for the panelists, feel free to raise your hand and ask. So our opening question are, you talked about the successes of dialogue work. What are some of the challenges you face in creating dialogues or having dialogues, or for the people in the audience, what were some of the difficult dialogues that you engaged in? So that's an open question for the audience, but again, if you have a question for each panelist, feel free to raise your hand.
You said something really important about dialogue, is that when someone's talking, they're talking about something they care about. And when you're discussing something that people are actively involved in, people are already formulating a response before you're done even discussing your viewpoints. So in that respect, when we're having a dialogue or conversation, people aren't really ever listening. Which I think that kind of ties into one of the bigger problems with having civic discourse or discussing things is that oftentimes we're already thinking about what we're going to say before anyone even finishes making their points. So I think one important part to having really good progressive conversations about anything is that we need to just listen to each other. And, put aside what you think for a minute, open yourself up and listen to what other people are saying, and you touched on that really well. And this isn't necessarily a question or anything like that, but I just wanted to emphasize that point because I thought it was really important. I'm really glad that you said that.
Thank you. Yeah, I do think that also the more personalized questions that I noticed that we've been asking kind of more of a, what do you think and what are your experiences with whatever we're addressing has also helped bring out more listening because people are less worried about what they're going to say and how they're going to be interpreted maybe academically and more about what is my personal experience with this. So I think that actually also does help address or at least helps people, take the time to listen and stop thinking so much what they're going to say.
I want to address my question to Ms. Thompson because you said something about that you're a political science major.
Yes.
But, I hope that you jump in as well. This is my question. As we see, and I'm sorry to roll the eyes, but it's just very frustrating as a person who is so proud of going to vote, get home and see that the outcomes aren't what I was hoping they'd be, that we would have people that would come on board who are open-minded and that are thinking of the broader community rather than themselves. So I dream of a time when the people that get elected aren't so attached to which political party they're aligned with, but more with what they want to do to make lives better for all of us and our children and their children. So my quick question is, do you see change? Are they teaching you to be a rebel, to be a maverick, to go out there and do the right thing for the greater good rather than for politics' sake? Because I think that's where we're going from.
Yeah, so in my personal experience, I do see that, but I also would like to give UConn a lot of credit for that because I do think it's a really progressive university and I definitely know a lot of the things that I've learned and taken away from my professors and from different student groups as well. But yeah, I do think that one of the things that inspired me to get involved with the dialogues in general was this, at least after the most recent presidential election, just how these two political communities are so polarized and are almost assuming before any conversation begins what the other one is going to say. And it's very frustrating being a political science major and being just an American. As we we all know, to just try to be seen as a human instead of a political party. So I think that hopefully moving forward we can involve these. And we actually, during Metanoia there was, which was a day of confronting racism at UConn, we did have a conversation, open office hours, to talk about how we could implement dialogues in classrooms and how they can be different depending on what setting is involved. So we are trying to do that, and I do hope that it takes off even more.
Yeah, that's definitely a great question that you asked. That, I think that sometimes when people run for office, they have a particular agenda of the people and quickly shift to their personal agendas. And sometimes we forget who got us there, which was the people. So for me personally, I feel that we need to be a voice to the community, a voice for the people, whether it's at a city level, state level, or beyond. It is staying true to our core values and what got us there, and not change because of a political agenda. And that's something that happens a lot, unfortunately. So as individuals, really staying true to themselves and being a true voice of the people.
And to further discuss how colleges have kind of facilitated their students to be rebels, I can speak on behalf of UConn that they provide a lot of opportunities for community application of what we learn and what we discuss in class, so that we have the ability to change what we see fit.
So this is for all the panelists. I can imagine that in community and campus dialogues, when we're looking at action-oriented items, things that come out of the dialogues that are, need action, who owns the accountability for making sure those things happen or someone's addressing them?
I think it's a collective effort as far as accountability. Within, I would say, the several years of the particular group of those dialogues, but I think also, I feel like there has to be personal investment within those dialogues and those conversations where, yes, the individuals are there to guide and help and lead and connect with the right individuals and resources, but I think that if those individuals that show up and speak are truly just as invested, great change will come out of it. So I feel like it starts, yes, with the groups, but even I think accountability is within ourselves to speak up and find a way to navigate and work with those individuals to ensure that we get the results that we're seeking ultimately.
I'd like to agree that personal accountability is probably first and foremost to any discussion that we have, because who's going to tell our stories better than us? So it's a matter of learning what opportunities are available and how to facilitate your own stories and motivations through that.
If I could add to that quickly, I agree with what's been said, but I would also say that part of the power of community dialogues is that it can result in community-driven action, and it's really important that it be community-driven, and that distinguishes the action that comes out of community dialogues from a lot of other kinds of community initiatives. Community dialogues, depending on how you do them, are organized and driven by the participants, by the community. And when it comes to implementing the action, there may be other partners involved, but the community has to be an integral part of making the action happen. That's part of the value of the whole.
As black, white, brown, and Latinos, young people speaking out and up about the racism and the isms that exist in our society today. Can you tell us a little bit more about your own personal stories? I know as a Latina myself, and going up the ropes, I've always found myself being either too Puerto Rican for some things, too black for some things, and then too white for some things, and then trying to find, where's my balance in between. So I'd like to know if you can shed some light as to, have you ever found yourself not being taken seriously when you're speaking about certain issues? And if you are speaking up and out about the isms that exist, can you tell us a little bit about what your immigrant status has played into that role, and have you been referred to as, Puerto Rican trying to be too white, and so on and so forth, or a white person trying to be black? Just because these are some of the dialogues that are taking place with a lot of our young people that are speaking out about these issues, and I'm interested in getting a perspective from kids that are in college, that are really going to be those rebels to change the world around us.
So I was born in South Africa. I come from an Argentine family, and prior to moving to America, we also lived in Argentina. It's been funny growing up in a predominantly white town of Farmington, Connecticut. And I've always kind of been used as an ambassador for Spanish communities or South African even, despite having grown up in the same environment they have. So I guess an incorrect way of saying this is that you do have baggage that comes along with these migrant stories that are essential to your own identity and also what you bring to the discussion. So it's about recognizing that and also embracing that you do have these unique perspectives, and from that you can create change.
So I will add a little bit more information, but then we'll have time for one more brief question. So although I'm part in charge of the initiative on campus dialogue, I put it that way. I'm also a graduate student, which means I'm teaching classes, I'm using dialogue in classrooms, and I'm teaching philosophy. And if anyone ever looked up statistics, which you have no reason to, on philosophy, you'll find out that less than 1% of faculty in philosophy are of African or African American descent. So going into those spaces, you're already not expecting me to be your teacher, your professor. So usually I just sit down in the classroom beforehand, and I just hang up, because I'm like, I'm still young enough where I can pull it off. I look like an older student, like a teacher. But it's a one thing where we're just having a conversation, and we can just be dialoguing beforehand. And now when I'm a person, an expert in that role, you have a dynamic shift, but that's why you use dialogue in the classroom, where I personalize it, yes, I know some information on these philosophers and philosophies, but we all come into the room with our own philosophies. Or when you're using dialogue in communities, you already have your own opinions and beliefs, and part of being a facilitator of dialogue is it's not about you in that situation. It's about the people in the room and facilitating a dialogue. How can they learn about one another? So it is true that the identity you represent can be a barrier in some ways, but that's really why I think dialogue is so important, because it teaches you the skill to be like, yes, I'm coming into this room with whatever identities I have, but the purpose is the dialogue. So tell me about your personal experience. Show me your narrative, because I'm missing out on that. And now what are we going to do about it? So I definitely think it is a factor, but dialogue is powerful too. So with that being said, we do have room for one more question in the audience. Yes, sir.
This is a young lady on the you have political ambition, I think.
Depending on the political climate.
I'm asking that because if you have political ambition, my thing is, are you willing to go into inner city neighborhoods and sit down with people and actually have dialogue about the issues? And sometimes it's not going to be pleasant. You know what I mean? And I mean not just African Americans, it's Hispanic, it's a plethora of nationalities that are in those areas. So I'm wondering if you were willing, or able or willing to do that.
Yeah, most definitely. I think that's one of the things that's most interesting to me in general. I think it's constantly a challenge trying to learn how other people see the world and to challenge how I've learned to see the world. And I think that being able to reach out and engage in these dialogues is finally letting me bridge my academics into the real world. And I have been looking into different things to do after graduation, because that is coming up very fast for me. And I have also been looking at, I've been considering actually doing, maybe teaching in inner cities with a Teach for America program. And I would like to, if that is something I end up pursuing, I'd really like to bring dialogues into that. But again, I know there is going to be a learning curve, and I know that it is going to be very difficult to try to change the way that I see things as I'm constantly doing and have been doing for the last 4 years.
Well, people in the community, that's the reason I asked you, because there's a distrust with politicians. They'll tell you one thing, and then later on, it's something totally different. So on Facebook, a month ago, I read an article from a man from Chicago, and he said, he quoted the last 5 presidents, then he showed the neighborhood, and he said, still the same. So the point he was making was, they get up here, they tell us this, they tell us that, oh yeah, we believe, we understand, we understand your cause, but then everything is still the same. But then they want you to be a part of the process.
Yeah.
So that's all I do.
Yeah, it's definitely not easy, and I think that with a lot of my other poli-sci majors, were a little discouraged after the recent election because of how, I guess, polarized everything had continued to be and had gotten just so much worse. But I think that moving forward, we're going to have to bridge some things, and we're going to have to find similarities, and we're going to have to meet on common grounds if we want to make progress. And maybe I'm still young, but I do believe that's possible.
You're on the right.
I think we're just getting moving here, so it's unfortunate that we are basically out of time. So by way of wrap up, and then I'll turn it over to Dana to share a little bit of information with you. I just want to quickly tell a little story, which maybe gets to some of the things that have been brought up in the past few minutes, but it also really illustrates the power of community dialogues. A couple of years ago, I was involved in a dialogue on the north end of Hartford, in the northeast neighborhood. That this was actually before the No by Neighbor initiative that Eli talked about. But the point was to bring neighborhood residents and police officers together. This was shortly after Ferguson happened. And we had a small but diverse group. The residents ranged in age from about 16 to 87. We had 3 or 4 police officers, and there was an elected official there too. And at the end, there were 3 sessions, once a week for 3 weeks. At the end of the 3 weeks, I said to everybody, was there anything that surprised you about this dialogue? And one young man, who's about 18 at the time, raised his hand and he said, well, what really surprised me was that, I've been part of lots of community meetings and discussions, etc. What surprised me about this was I didn't expect to be heard. And he had gotten into the habit of going to various meetings and events and speaking up, but walking away feeling that he had not been heard. And in this dialogue, he had a different feeling. So that really illustrates the power of community dialogues. And I'm going to run the risk of getting Val really mad and add part 2 of this story, which was a year went by, and I sat down one evening at a community meeting next to a police officer who had been part of that dialogue. And he said to me, I've been meaning to tell you, I just had a chance. James, that young man who said I didn't expect to be heard, a few weeks after, the dispatcher sent me out to respond to a call, actually, I believe on Manor Street, which is where we had the original dialogue. And he said, I got out of the car, the police car, and there were a lot of people on the street who were really upset. I was trying to figure out what was going on. It had something to do with a car accident. And right in the middle of it was this young man named James. And he was really agitated, and he had something to do with the car accident. His mother was involved in it. But the officer felt that this was really potentially explosive situation that he walked into. And of course, police officers have to deal with this all the time. So he walked towards the center of the activity, and he saw James, and James saw him, and their eyes met. And he said, when our eyes met, James's face just changed, because he knew me. He knew me because we had participated in this dialogue and built a little bit of a relationship. So this young man who who was surprised that he had been heard, then had this experience a few weeks later of recognizing this police officer. And because they recognized each other, they were able to take the edge off the situation just enough so it was no longer explosive. So just a couple of quick stories that illustrate really the power of dialogue. Over to Dan.
Thank you, Rich. So I just wanted to end by saying that our last session today will also feature a dialogue component. So this is also a time to get your voices heard. So me and my colleague Brendan Kane will be moderating some breakout sessions. So I just wanted to let that be known. And also, if you can look in your little packages or pamphlets, you'll all receive a USB drive. And this is filled with a toolkit with dialogue information. So streamers, like if you're interested in doing your own dialogues and learning about different dialogue models, you'll find this on your USB. So that being said, I want to just another round of applause for our panelists.
Thank you very much, all of you, for being here and for a great panel presentation. We're going to take a 3-minute bathroom and coffee break, and then get started with the next panel. Thank you. So, the power of civic participation is transformative and continuous. Indeed, in his book, The Gardens of Democracy, Eric Toole talked about the civic contagion, and each one of us having the potential of being the super carrier of that contagion. Parents can be models, role models for their children and youth to become civically engaged in their communities. We're very pleased to have with us 2 parents and their children who will talk about their intergenerational experience with civic participation. First, I am pleased to introduce the moderators of the panel. Ms. Sarah Whitmore, who is the Executive Director of Connecticut State House, and Madeline Calderon, the Executive Director of Connecticut Department of Power. Our panelists are Ms. Kim Tipton and her daughter, the first Connecticut Kid Governor, Elena Tipton, and Ms. Lisa Serrano Adorno, a Connecticut Department of Power member and Board of Education member in Waterbury, and her son Jacob. Please join me in welcoming them.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Marilyn Calra. I'm the Executive Director of Connecticut Care and Power, and it's an honor and pleasure to be here with you all this afternoon for this very important dialogue. As you know, parents and their voice are really, really critical, especially when we're looking at really civically engaging not only our most seasoned people in our community, like our parents and grandparents, but our youngest children at different ages and stages of development. This effort is really looked through a multiple lens of intergenerations, because we know that it really takes a great deal of people to really bring up a child to be effectively, socially, emotionally, physically, and academically sound in all that they do. So as we're working through this dialogue, we want to be sure that you understand our roles. So as a parent-led organizer myself, Connecticut Parent Power engages, educates, and mobilizes parents across the state to change policies at the statewide level. And it's really an honorable journey to go through, because we believe in many of the things that were discussed this morning regarding the importance of story sharing and story learning, and really facilitating one-on-ones that really bring people to the forefront to see themselves not only in the story, but also in the data that we're sharing amongst ourselves in our communities and statewide and nationally, to ensure that they use the data to drive best practices for their child. So without further ado, I will pass on the baton to Sally Whipple.
Hi, it's a great pleasure to be here today. I am the Executive Director of the Whole State House. I work for the Connecticut Public Affairs Network. And one of the programs that we do is called Connecticut State Governor. And it is run by my colleague, Brian Francesco, who's sitting over there. And I will briefly tell you about the program so you have a context for the things that Elena will talk to you about. Kid Governor is a free in-class program for 5th grade students. Their teachers can use our lesson plans to teach about the value, the history, and the process of voting. And this is we're in our 3rd year of doing it right now. We had 6,000 students registered to vote in our elections this year for a new key governor who was just announced a couple of weeks ago. But the students can participate in a couple of ways. They can register to vote and vote for candidates, or they can run for office. And this year we had 30 candidates for office. And those candidates need to think about an issue in the community that they care deeply about. They need to research it and come up with a 3-point plan for addressing that issue that they see in their community. And then they have to create a campaign video and register fifth-grade voters across the state, watch the videos, and vote for the kid governor. The first year we did it, Elena ran for office, and she became Connecticut's first kid governor on the platform of kindness. And through this program, we have really begun to see what students across Connecticut care about. But we've also been able to see firsthand the power that they have in helping adults understand the importance of civic engagement and the importance of staying civically engaged themselves. And I'm really proud to say that Elena was not only a terrific first kid governor who set a marvelous model for future kid governors, but she continues to work with us on our advisory council and in other capacities. So she is a real great model of civic engagement. And today it will really be wonderful to talk to Elena and her mother, Kim Tipton, about intergenerational civic participation. They're both wonderful models for us, so we're very happy to have them with us today.
We know that parent involvement is really critical to the process of raising the child. We know that parents are the child's first and most influential teacher. So through this effort, we've had the opportunity to work hand in hand with our wonderful panelists that really has brought in at the forefront the importance of being true to yourself in all that you do. So with parents involved, we know that there's much inspiration that takes place. So we'd like to know what inspires you both as mothers to become civically engaged, and how do your children really piggyback on those efforts?
So I can start. My children are the reason that I really became civically engaged. Elena is one of 4 of my children. When they started school, things like budget and what was available to them really became important to me, and I started to talk to people in town. I started to be able to talk to the superintendent and realized that slowly my voice could make a difference in their everyday lives. And then after Elena became kid governor, she sort of helped inspire me to realize that outside of the school system in my local area, I could also speak up, and she could speak up, and then I could be more civically engaged. And I hope to be a model for them to continue to speak about issues that are important to them.
Thank you. So I like to be organized. I like to write things down in advance so I don't forget some of the key points. But I actually do agree with her as well. My children and my husband, along with my parents, also inspire me every day to stay civically engaged because we believe in social justice and equitable systems change, which takes dedication and strength, especially when the system doesn't love you back, if you want to speak true to power. So we realize that we can't afford to give people like our new president the power because they end up taking everyone's power away. So in order to change this narrative for Latinas like we must take our power back and run for office to make the changes happen with our voices that change dialogue to action. Unapologetically for the wellness of all around us, spiritually, emotionally, socially, and economically. And one of the things that I'm probably most proud of recently is I am the current commissioner for the City of Waterbury Board of Education. And I was actually sworn in last night, so. And even on the other dialogue that was here present, and I understand, I don't really consider myself a politician. I just always say that people are like, you don't say that, or why do you say that? But I'm a mom first, and I'm just a person that cares. So I've always been involved in their school system, in the Women's Council, with PTAs. I've always just been involved in Women's Inspirational Network, even though I am a mother of 4 sons. So I do a lot for the women community as well. and my kids are a part of that as well. So we like to just be involved, not only civically, but just even in our community, in our education system. So I do encourage not only my own children, but the children in our schools. I was always that parent on that other side of the podium during the Board of Education who's really advocating for all our children. And I even have a child with autism, which is a challenge in itself. But another thing that I'm also proud of is I was able to bring a sensory-friendly films to the city of Hartford, and special accommodations and for those with special needs. I did try to bring it to a bigger movie theater, and they wanted me to rent out the stadium and do other ways, but one of our smaller movie theaters actually accepted it, loved it, and also all kids with special needs are able to enjoy something that we take for granted of. So I want to inspire my children to kind of be able to give back to the community as well.
That's wonderful, thank you. I'm going to ask a similar question of Elena and Jacob. Your mothers are very inspiring, and they've done a lot intentionally, I think, to help move you along towards civic engagement. So I'd like to know, really, tell us a little bit more about how your mothers have inspired you, and where else have you drawn your inspiration? Jacob, you want to start? No?
Well, I guess I'll start. So, as my mother's favorite of her 4 children, a lot of the same goals and a lot of the same beliefs that she has ensued in me with my religious background. I'm a student. I'm a junior at Water River Academy, which opened in 2013. And going into college, I'm looking into a lot of things, and Bible studies is one of them. And one thing that I learned recently from pursuing religion and pursuing the faith of God, I have seen through multiple scriptures, multiple verses, multiple pages in its entirety from the Bible, just of accepting everyone and being able to advocate and to speak on your behalf and accepting everyone and loving everyone unconditionally. My mom has been a part of multiple Latina events, women empowerment events, and I attend all of them, even though I'm clearly not a woman. And even beyond that, I want to advocate for everyone. And some people believe that race is a pedestal in which you should be able to advocate for Hispanics because you are Hispanic. You should be able to advocate for Black because you're Black, and other ethnicities in itself. I don't agree with that. I hate that people assume that, because I feel like all of us as a community should all be able to come together and to address the same problems, as we do see that in other circumstances. If we were under those conditions, we would ask the same out of other people. And the one thing that my mom really ensued into me is generosity, to be benevolent and to be selfless. And I definitely do thank my mom for teaching me those values, because if I didn't, I wouldn't be here. And I'm blessed and honored, privileged to be able to come here and really to be able to vocalize my opinions and my desires to be able to change my community, and maybe that can steal her job one time. Definitely.
Thank you, that's a great answer.
My mom inspired me, honestly, and she inspired me because she pushes through everything and puts us first in front of all of her other priorities, and in front of work, and in front of her own life, and I just hope I can be with her. So.
Thank you.
Well, as you can see, the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree. I think that there are valuable lessons, and there are things that, in life as community civic ambassadors, you need to push through those very difficult times to really make the difficult things happen, and really see those challenges as opportunities to learn and grow from. And I think lifting up what Jacob stated, really being generous to people and loving them unconditionally is not an easy journey to do, because really social, emotional, educational, economic acceptance is something that we all have to push through every day. So I'm interested in learning more about what are the lessons that your children have taught you as moms through this process of civic engagement and also pushing through this opportunity of becoming a leader as a civic ambassador? And either one of you could answer one.
Some things I've learned from my children, particularly from Elena, is that I have a voice. Unlike Elena, do not enjoy public speaking very much. And I often will go a route of being civically engaged in a smaller conversation or an email to not have to put myself out in front of people. I've learned that it's okay to speak in front of people. It's okay to stand up and have an opinion. It's okay to stand up and give a different opinion than everybody else may have in the room.
So, I must be the mother bear that changes the life of all the children and the families, not just my own, but using a show not tell manner of life and being as a civic ambassador that gives more to her family and community than she receives. Because through the acts of kindness that are innately part of who we really are, to share the gift of community freedom with all by model practices that I live by. My belief in God with unwavering faith. My belief in myself to model what I want my children to become in the future. Active and positive young adults who are civically engaged deeply with the community to change the narrative of our most disenfranchised people. My belief that there is a better way to live in life, which is by equalizing the playing field with our fight in attaining equity in education, equity in job creation and accessibility, equitable housing availability, to bring more diversity into our neighborhoods that models my brother and sister's keeper, supports not in verbal connection, but in true actionable efforts. My belief that our job on this earth should be bigger than you. So get up every day, make things happen for yourself, for your family, for your community, because life is exactly what you put into it. Change the challenges to opportunities to learn and grow from, because you are worth it. And so are the people around you.
Thank you. I'm really interested in learning from Elena and Jacob. What are some of the civic skills that you've developed that have helped you with the projects that you've done and the causes that you've led? Are there specific skills that you feel you have developed or always had that other civic ambassadors could benefit from? I know, Elena, I had the opportunity to watch you grow in many skills over the past few years. And I'd really like to hear from both of you just what you think some of those things are that people need in order to be good, engaged civically, or to be good civic leaders. Elena?
For me, it's a passion. If you have a passion that's driving you to make something better, or that's motivating you to see a better tomorrow, then that'll just kind of lead you in the right direction. If you have a passion if you want to change something, you have to have a passion behind it. And that's just why I think that you have to have a passion, and you also have to care for people and be able to understand and be a person. Because I know a lot of the times, sometimes, and for me, teachers, they'll be more of a teacher, but sometimes they'll be a person, and you need to understand where somebody else is coming from.
Anyways, I think the one valuable lesson that my mom started taught me was to be able to take certain experiences and learn from them and to grow. To learn how to embrace failures in the same way that you would embrace success as in certain situations. This is the best analogy I can come up with because I dance actually. I look into learning urban dance choreography and teaching it to other people. So I have looked into competitive dancing. So in a dance battle, let's just say, there's only two outcomes of that. Either you win or you learn. Obviously, I would love to win. And as the youngest of four brothers, we do embrace friendly competition. So I do want to be able to be able to succeed and to show that the work I put in up to that point forward is able to blossom into something amazing out of it, that all is going to say put in work or not, but instead, if I were to fail, if I were to unfortunately not have my ideal outcome come into fruition, that I am able to, in future circumstances and in future events, be able to attain this newfound knowledge and to be able to find a new perspective on which to be able to take a task or to be able to perform.
I would like to lift up some of what Jacob and Elena stated. When you find your passion and your care for people and you're pushing through things that really push the envelope, not only for yourself, but for others around you, you know that pushing yourself into uncomfortable zones really helps you grow in different areas. So I'd like to know, when your kids have a winning mindset and they don't win and they don't get what they want, what are some of the things, the core values that you both instill in your children to ensure that they don't fall behind and start making it about the woes, the woes means, but also getting up and making things happen regardless?
So I kind of go off of yours, Jacob. There's many times where the children haven't gotten the outcome they want, but I think learning from any opportunity is what I try to instill in them. I try to get the kids to see if, even if they didn't win, were they able to get something out of it? Were they able to learn something from it? Were they able to make a small change from it? Have made new connections from it? I think if they can take that away, then it's not such a negative experience. I also think I try to instill in them to talk about, even if you didn't win or you didn't get the outcome, how come the other person did? What did they do differently that you might take out of it and learn from and be able to implement next time? It can be in simple things, or not simple, everyday things like something that also does that. Or it can be in bigger things when you're trying to make a change in a community. If someone else has the edge and they've been able to do something that you haven't, what did they do differently and how can you learn from that so next time you can be the person who is on top?
So I would say if you're passionate about something, like each of my kids have different ideas or different talents, different artistic abilities, and even to piggyback on what Jacob said, obviously it's not about losing, it's about learning from it. So believing in yourself, staying true to yourself, not giving up. You know, when you work hard, I think it pays off. Use the gifts that you have to change the world around you. I think dance is a good way of expressing yourself. And some of the people that I have been able to see and perform. And just like any time, there's a dialogue, so words can really, mean something and show people an expression. So is dance. So I love that about him. But especially know that you're enough and speak up for what you're willing to do.
Thank you. I think we're coming close to the end of this session, so I'd like to see if anybody in the audience has any questions for our panelists. Yes.
I don't know if this is much of a question, but I'm just doing so much. I'm doing a lot of reflecting today. I'm a teacher. I teach world history and sociology, and I'm really just kind of digesting it all. But I love how Jacob has talked about or his mom too, the idea that he's present at some of these things because I love Justin Trudeau, and he talks about that, like how, feminists, it's not just a women's issue, actually, what are you doing to teach your sons, to include women more, and things like that. And, in sociology, I've been showing my kids Morgan Freeman, us versus them. We've been talking about like how do you get your voice heard. And, he explores like a Westboro Baptist person and how they were able to have their opinion changed. They were the grandchild of the founder. The idea though that being heard is how you're you're gonna get your message across, or listening and letting the person feel like you're listening to them, even if you don't necessarily agree with their opinion. The compassion that, or just the soft skills, you know, of coming across as not aggressive in your beliefs. I know, Elena, you talked about passion, but how you also are compassionate in that passion. I don't know, it's so much sticking in your ear today, and it's really being kind of brought full circle. But thank you to everyone for being so open and sharing today. I don't know if somebody wants to jump on now, but I didn't really have a question.
I would just like to, those were great comments, and I love the idea of people reflecting. There's a lot to think about today. But I would really like to encourage everybody to go to the Kid Governor website, which is ct.kidgovernor.org, and you can see Elena's video there from when she ran for Kid Governor, but you can also see her blog, which was something that anybody could access, but specifically for 5th grade students, where she gives shout-outs to students in Connecticut who have done kind things and good things to make sure that people understand that students, young students, have the power to change the world. And I think that you'll also see all of the other student videos that will show you what kids are interested in. But I think you'll get a really great idea of Elena's compassion and see how her message has really been carrying forward with all of the Kid Governors. I think it's a wonderful thing to see young people so deeply engaged in civic life.
And I also want to lift up that besides parents being the first and most influential teachers of their children, really lifting up, what is each of our role in our lives when we're touching the lives of a young child? What's the legacy we want to leave behind? And I leave you with that question because I think that sometimes we want to be remembered as a certain person, but yet we don't work as hard as we should with our sweat equity to make things happen. And I think it's really critical to really lift up what Mrs. Tipton has stated earlier. When your child is able to teach you how to find your voice, and even though you don't like speaking in front of the public, you find what really makes you tick through the love of your own child and their own love of giving more compassion and passion to their community. That's a gift that you can't put a price tag on. And for the first time I met you in Atlanta, and I saw you both at the State House, I did want to, just commend you for not only cultivating that at early ages and stages of life of your child, but really showing her humility at that early age and stage of her life to really give back without expecting anything in return. And Melissa, you and I go back many years being part of our construct. It's really about empowering and engaging, like you stated, not only your child, but the community as a whole. And when you adopt a community as your own children, it's a win-win. Everybody wins, because what I'm trying to co-create with my own child, I'm actually modeling for you in my own community. And it goes back to know thy neighbor, or that movement that the pastor spoke about earlier. And one of the things that I charge you with is, what keeps you spiritually rooted in moving something forward? Whatever spiritually rootedness we practice to make things happen, because our children's gifts don't just happen overnight. They're co-created naturally. And with your 4 children, I think you have a group of 8 that can really mobilize the world as a whole. So I want to thank you for the time. Are there any other questions you might have? Yes.
Someone took a question and was more maybe in charge, not that but for Lena and for Jacob, I think of the community of children that are out there. Some that maybe are facing challenges that Jacob is so alone, and Elena can do with your passion. I'm thinking we have access TV, right? So we do these little items, 1 minute snippets. And you say, the sky is the limit, everything is possible so long as you have passion. So long as you know that we didn't lose, we learned something. And for the money, Ms. Mrs. Tipton, I think you as parents are perfect role models for the PTO people. And for those who stay home and think, I'm going to make a difference, you can do something.
comment. One of the things I think that I'm always saying to a lot of people is you do have a voice, and you may start off with just one person, but it really just takes that one. But when you go with a group of people, when you go with an army, they'll hear you loud and clear. You know, so that's one thing that I always motivate people and parents to attend those Board of Ed meetings, to attend those meetings, to be actively involved in your child's education and in their lives, but even in the community, because you may see a problem on the street, you know, they need to stop sign. You can make that happen. And there's other programs out there, like PLTI, Parent Leadership Training Institute, like Parent C, which stands for Parent Supporting Educational Excellence, which both me and my husband are graduates of. But they teach you steps that you can take as a parent and as a community leader to really go out there and be civically engaged and learn what your steps are, what your rights are, and to use your voice, not to be afraid. For the Hispanic communities, you know, a lot of people that only speak another language, say it in your language, say it where you feel most comfortable with it. Let someone else translate it for you, but we really need people to be involved and to use their voice and really go out there and continue to be an example for their children, because we need to hear from you know.
And in closing, I'd like you all to say one word that sums up your experience here.
Boy, I could say a lot. I'm going to say blessed.
Sweaty.
Motivation.
Sad.
Happy.
And I went with transformative. I think that's where it all starts. So hopefully we'll be able to transform our communities. Thank you so very much.
Thank you all very much for your time. So we'll take a 3-minute break, coffee there, and we'll start the last time before the plenary. So 3 minutes. So earlier today, Dr. Kojima Ginsberg spoke about the importance and benefits of civic learning for building civic skills, habits, and participation. Civics education and learning can be an essential part of creating civic leaders and communities. Our next panel, entitled Civic Learning that Builds Civic Skills, will touch on that important aspect of our experience. I am pleased to introduce the two moderators for this panel, Mr. Stephen Armstrong, Social Studies Consultant with the Connecticut Department of Education, and co-founder of the Red, White, and Blue Schools program, and Lucas Cole, a Newington High School student and leader. And we have 3 great panelists also joining us, starting with Sally Whitmore, you met her earlier, with the Connecticut State House and Connecticut Public Affairs Network, and Shayna Obla and Patrick Byrne, both are Amity Senior High School students who are part of the Red, White, and Blue Schools program. Please help me welcome them.
Again, my name is Steve Armstrong. I am in charge of social studies for the Connecticut State Department of Education. And I would just, a couple of just preliminary comments. People, and you heard this in an earlier panel, that there's really sort of a lot of soul searching in a lot of folks that study civic education. That, you know, what have we done right? What have we done wrong? And I think the consensus that a lot of folks have is that some, but not all, but some civic educators have spent a lot of time teaching about a lot about how things happen. Like, and maybe some of you could remember back to your own high school courses in the 70s, where there may have been 10, 12, 15 worksheets given out on how a bill becomes law, or something like this. Or somebody may, I mean, I visited a class last year, where students were being led, the task was that they were having when I was visiting, is this is not an exaggeration, by the way, they had to memorize all the cabinet posts and who, like the Secretary of Commerce was, who the Secretary of the Interior was. And this was the test they were having. So the fear of some civic educators is we've spent too much time on sort of that type of activity, but that schools should be more places where kids can practice democracy. Not just learn about it, that's important, but kids should have time to practice democracy. And incidentally, that can go as far down as a first grade class, right? The first grade class where the teacher gets the kids together after a week and they make the class rules for the school, for their year, for their class. Isn't that at some level on a very elementary stage, isn't that the first practice of civic, isn't that a civic practice? So I think a lot of civic educators now, and some of you have been in schools and may know schools that have done this all along, but instead of just learning about government, that schools should be more opportunities to practice. And this is why we have this program called the Red, White, and Blue Schools. This was started last year with our department and the Secretary of State's office, where we're recognizing schools that do a good job of this. Last year's topic, by the way, was a very difficult topic for many social studies teachers. It was teaching the 2016 election. And whether you could imagine that in a lot of schools, that was a very, very difficult process. How you moderate discussions with students with such disparate beliefs. You know, I know you guys, that's stuff that you worked on. I can tell you that the fallback position, which I think is a horrible one, but there were at least 15 school districts in Connecticut last year that their decision as how to handle that is we're not talking about it. And then there was at least 15 school districts in Connecticut whose decision is, you know how we handle this? These discussions are too contentious. These discussions are too difficult. Rather than helping teachers get the skills to moderate those discussions, the decision was, we're just not going to talk about it. So that's something that civic discourse, and quite frankly, many teachers need help in that, in moderating those types of discussions. This year's theme for the Red, White, and Blue Schools is student engagement at the local level. And this year what we want to do is recognize and reward schools, recognize schools who do a good job of having their teachers do this. And by the way, the Red, White, and Blue Schools program is for elementary school kids, for middle school kids, and for high school kids with different rubrics and expectations for all groups. The other thing that I would just like to mention is we teach social studies, and not all teachers and not all districts do this, but if the state frameworks would say, we want teachers to use an inquiry model in social studies, where we have students, we don't have the teacher, hopefully, although not entirely absent, but we don't want, it should not be a totally teacher-directed instruction model. That we want students to be in groups probably, answering questions by looking at primary sources, and at some level having students come up by themselves with the answers to the questions, not having the teacher telling them what the answer is. And this is a model that is, I mean, to some old-time teachers, they can't believe it. You're telling me inquiry is new. I was doing this in 1975 or something like this. But to some teachers, this is very different than a student-directed model of instruction. But why I'm bringing this up now is our model, it's based on a national framework called C3, is the final stage of inquiry. Like suppose we're doing an inquiry on a contemporary social problem or political problem. Is the last stage of inquiry is what we call taking informed action. Is taking what we learned about the problem, whatever it was, and how can we directly make a change in the community by studying the problem. So, and by the way, you notice it's not just called taking action. What's the key word in there? Taking informed action. So we want students to study the problem, but then after studying the problem, how can we make a change in society? You may be surprised to know that when we were, this is now 3 years ago, when we were getting the frameworks approved, there was actually opposition to this. By actually, in fairness, they will completely remain nameless here, a couple of state elected leaders. Why would they be opposed to students taking informed action? Would anyone guess, by the way? Why would you not want kids taking informed action? I mean, isn't that so obvious? We want kids to be active citizens. What do you think their fear was? What if they become active in things that we don't necessarily? Please. Exactly. What if they become active in things that we don't want them to be in? By the way, I gotta tell you this anecdote. Sally's heard this 10 times, but one of the people, what the person said on they said on their blog, I'm very opposed to this thing in the new social studies frameworks about taking informed action. If you agree with me, please write to me. We're opposed to kids taking informed action, but if you agree with me on this, take informed action. So, but in any case, the big thing is, I think, civics education in Connecticut and in the nation, maybe I'm repeating myself here, but maybe for too long, has taught about teaching kids about civics. And I think this is that's why we've asked these fine folks to be here, is maybe it's time, and it is time, that we have kids practicing civics. So with that introduction, I turn it to my co-chair, Lucas, and Lucas, any question?
Good afternoon, everyone. As you said, I'm Lucas Poole. I'm from Newington High School, and I'm a senior. And I'm here today because I've been very fortunate to be very civically involved. I've been very fortunate to find opportunities and places where I can get involved with my community. And that started really last year, or the year before, when I was elected to liaison to my Board of Education and talk to them about what my students were facing, what my community was facing, what was going on in high school, so they would understand better, because they wanted to be more in touch. That then progressed to me venturing out in different places. I was invited to go to a conference with the Red, White, Blue Schools that Steve helped to co-found. And there we discussed the election and the nitty-gritty. The 2 weeks after that happening, it was still very fresh. And so the topic was definitely interesting to discuss there, but that led me to meeting Tina Prakash, where I eventually got my internship with the Secretary of State, where I've been since March. I'm very thankful for that, because each and every day I go there, I learn more and more about what's going on in the state, what we're doing to rectify that, where we're going to keep people involved. It's been so transformative, and everything I've done has really revolved around my experience there. I'm now the president of Student Council. I founded a debate club, because if my school's not going to talk about the election, I'm going to let the students talk about it. I'm going to let them scream at each other. I'm going to let them talk it out, venture it out, be told something they haven't understood, and then understand things and try to express their viewpoints to one another, because there's really nothing more important than understanding that. And through my experience there, I've become more understanding and empathetic that just because I haven't gone through these things that I fight for Just because I haven't done this or that does not mean that I can't advocate for them. Just because I'm not a woman does not mean that I can't be a feminist and things like that. So understanding that your place in society has nothing to do with what you go through, but all the more understanding what other people go through and how we can work towards fixing that. The life my mother lived is not the life that I live, but I certainly am thankful that I did not grow up in the same childhood she did. I'm thankful for the things and opportunities that I had. So understanding that I spent most of my time in school, just like all the young people here, there's nothing more important than instilling these ideas of civics and getting involved in the school community, because that is where we all are, and we want our educators to be in that same belief. So that's why I'm here today, so thank you all for being here.
Hi, my name is Shay Gobla, and I'm a senior at Avery High School. I'm here today because I've always been a huge believer in community and involvement, especially on the local level. I've always been involved in politics and the community in Orange, Connecticut, where I live, because my father, Rich Gobla, was the first elected in Orange for 6 years, starting a little bit before I was born. So I was born into the political world and being involved in the community. In addition to being involved in politics, I have been involved in community service through Relay for Life and being a volunteer at Lowe's Mission City of Haven, where we give clothes and have groceries for those less fortunate on Saturday mornings. I am also largely involved in an organization called the Neighborhood Youth Organization, also known as BYO, for Jewish teen leaders, where I have served as community chair and social action chair. And also in my high school, I'm really involved in high school athletics. I play field hockey, and I wrestle, and I run track. So I was the first female wrestler on the wrestling team at Avery High School, and so I started that sophomore year. And for 3 years later, I am the first female captain of the wrestling team, so I'm very proud of that and continue with that. And as well as that, in school, I'm part of the National Honor Society, which was chosen by a random selection group of teachers, based on, and 2 students were chosen based on extracurricular activities, leadership skills, and everything like that. So I love being involved, and that's why I'm here today.
Hi, I'm Sally Whipple, and I just want to say it's always fun to see Lucas, because I went to Newington High School, and I was on the Student Board of Education there, and that experience really made me become extremely interested in civics and civic life and being engaged, as well as the example that my mother set for me and the things that she involved me in. And I'd also just like to say, the other day I had a meeting with a woman who said, I'm so upset about things going on in the world today, but I have no idea how to make my voice heard or how to get involved. I know there are lots of ways to get involved, but I haven't figured out what's right for me yet. And we talked about that a little bit, but really what it made me do is reflect on how lucky I am to have a job that I have. I work at a place where history and civics intersect. We do the Kid Governor program. My colleague Rebecca Taylor Conover, who's here, does Connecticut History Day, which teaches students how to think critically and express themselves. And I thought, I feel very fortunate that I can address some of the things that I see in the world through my job. And most of that job is working with young people and learning from young people. And I think the Red, White, and Blue Schools has been a wonderful way to help bring those students to the fore and get more and more students across the state engaged. So, where on some days I feel a little bit depressed about what's going on, there are other days when I see the people around me and what they're doing and what their potential is, and it is incredibly uplifting. So I feel very happy to be on this stage with these young people and the young people who are up here before.
Good afternoon. My name is Patrick Berlin, and I'm the Vice Mayor of New York and Connecticut for the Junior City of America, which is the largest student-run organization in the country. Sorry. The Junior City of America is a nonpartisan political club that runs chapters across the country in every state and promotes civics education and leadership programs for high school students. Each year, 10,000 students, myself included, meet in convention and conferences where they debate, hold on congresses, and elect student leaders. And as someone who entered high school as even someone who was who had difficulty with public speaking, I can say that it has absolutely transformed my high school career and my ability to publicly engage and speak. The self-selective nature of JSA has been extremely helpful at training the next generation of leaders to become involved in their communities and to get up and speak for what they believe in. It's part of the reason why the slogan of JSA is Feed the People. And so when I first arrived at my first convention in my freshman year, I was glued to my seat and I couldn't get up and talk in front of people like I am now. But after seeing my fellow statesmen and women get up and debate and speak for what they believe in and what they advocate for, I found myself at the end of the day getting up and advocating for the issues that I care about. Not only does JSA help with public speaking, but it also helps myself included become a more active part of my community. The past years I've campaigned with fellow statesmen and women in presidential primaries, state senate elections, and municipal elections. Another way that I've become involved in my community aside from the political element is through community service. At the first regional event that I ran in my cabinet this year, we prepared lunch for a soup kitchen in New Rochelle, New York, and wrote letters to veterans as part of our Junior States Food Initiative. Another initiative, which the Junior State is currently engaged in, is called Fight Apathy, where we go out into our schools and our chapters and we get other students to write on a giant collage what they believe in and what they advocate for. And we've seen that it actually gets a lot of people involved in our community, and it sort of grows the collection of civically engaged students. And something that I have done and pushed for this year is we, for the first time, the country have appointed a director of civic engagement to specifically coordinate voter registration drives, community service events with chapters across the Northeast state, New York, and Connecticut, and Massachusetts. So I'd love to hear talk about ways to increase civic involvement.
Don't take this question wrong, trust me. But how much are the three of you outliers? If you know what I mean. I'll ask it a different way. That wasn't your question. Do you find, since last year's election, or in mine, are students more engaged now? Are students interested? Sally, maybe you could comment on if you see any changes in students that have come in. I'd just be curious to know, in your view, because you have better than I do as an educator, what's the sort of the tone of kids right now? Where let's get civically involved, let's get civically interested. Could you make some comments on that?
I think that a lot of people, since the past election, have a lot of opinions, and they voice those opinions, but they necessarily don't go through the right ways to put them out to the public, or they just take these opinions and they talk about it with their friends, or I know in my school, we have a lot of openness for conversations, so we'll have conversations about it, but it doesn't necessarily get out to the public or get where they can actually make a difference with these opinions. So I feel like that's somewhere where we need to kind of just channel these conversations with our classmates and peers and teachers into actually channeling it out, into going out to the public and trying to make a difference with these opinions that we hold as students.
I would say that the past election has certainly been a driver behind involvement at our conventions, but we've always historically seen a lot of people from a broad variety of backgrounds, ethnicities, and religions sort of come and speak about what they have advocated for, what they want to advocate for. This election has actually driven a lot of expansion for the Junior State of America. We saw several chapters form sporadically, almost in the unprecedented amount of growth that we've seen. It's actually been very encouraging, and it's very beneficial to the communities that we have as chapters. And I'm very fortunate to come from a school that, as she has said, is very open to discussion. So we've been able to do a lot of activities and sort of community-based seminars with fellow students, parents, and just people in our community. So the election is a driver, but it's not. You don't need to rely on controversy necessarily to get people out. There's a lot of things that people care about and always care about, and so I think it's more about reaching out to people and sort of connecting them with what they want to talk about. And that's what JSA is for.
I agree with both of those statements very much. I just want to start off by saying that in and I'm guilty of this, so if you're guilty of it too, it's fine. I really don't mean this to be offensive, but a tweet is not action. I tweet constantly, all the time, about a bunch of different things that I was said about, but that does not necessarily translate into action. So exactly what you were just talking about is so right, and then how do we make people actually act on the things that they're so upset about? And that's why I think this program is so great, because I think that it's letting us civic ambassadors and like-minded people give our knowledge and understanding to the people that want to make a change, the ones that are like, okay, I'm really upset about this, I want to transform this into action. You know, a big problem is that we're reactive. We all are. Nobody's ever talking about, you know, gun rights until gun rights is a threat. Nobody's ever talking about healthcare until healthcare is a threat. So the problem is that we need to talk about things when they're not a hot topic, hot button issue. We need to talk about them constantly work towards moving them. So I think that we need to just keep a progressive dialogue going constantly. It shouldn't stop and end somewhere. It shouldn't start and go somewhere else. It should just be ever moving and growing and changing and expansive. So I think that's where we should start with that.
Sure. One change that we've seen this year at the museum, the Old State House, and other museums have reported this too, is a lot of poor behavior on field trips and poor behavior from visitors on tours, where kids, even as young as third grade, are bringing politics into our lessons about the three branches and making derogatory comments about different parties, different leaders. Visitors seem emboldened to talk about things they've never talked about before on tours. And what I think we see there is that I think people are struggling with change and different ideas, and they, kind of like you were saying, they don't quite have a way to express it in the right place, or maybe you were saying that. And so I think that we're also seeing students who are really, really interested in being effective and speaking out at different age levels. We see this at 5th grade with the number of students involved in Kid Governor, and we are now running that program in Oregon as well. It's a pilot program, and the students there in 5th grade have the same interests, and they really stem from Elena's original interest, which was kindness. There's a lot of concern among students with kindness, bullying, finding out ways to reach out to people and treat them well. And I think that what we really see is people yearning to have discussions and yearning to understand the world. So in work like ours, I think a lot of what we can do is help provide historical context for things that are going on, help people think about how to think about these things, and then open the doors for discussions. So Steve and I are now working on a program for regional conversations for high school students, and that would have kids from different towns coming together to discuss issues. And in talking to students about how we should approach this project, I have been so amazed by the students and their thoughts about what is happening today and their ideas for making things better and their yearning to come together and talk. So I think what the UConn Humanities Institute and other groups, Everyday Democracy, or the things that they're doing are so important, and I don't think we can do enough dialogue and discussion and model for people how they can get along with other people, whether it's on a field trip, in a classroom, or around Thanksgiving table. But I do think that I see a lot more students who really want to be engaged and find the best way to do it.
There's, with this year's theme of red, white, and blue being local engagement, I've talked to a number of teachers who have, their basic message is, look, I'd love to do this with my kids, but I don't know, like, how do I get in contact with somebody in the community? Who do I go to even do this? So would any of you have advice on that? If a teacher really was trying to get engaged in the community but didn't know how, what would anybody be able to talk about?
Yeah, so something that JSA prides itself in is civility. So we hardly have had any students ever attack one another, and that's because one of the things that we have instilled in all of our delegates is that you're a statesman or a stateswoman the second that you enter one of these conventions. You're not going to attack one of your fellow statesmen or women. And so whenever you're speaking on an issue, you're speaking as someone who holds himself with a lot of integrity. And so when you go to meetings, when you go to these conventions, it's all student run, it's all students working together. So we have lots of Republicans, Democrats, Libertarians, Greens, Socialists, Communists, and Independents who have vast differences in their beliefs. We have a mock election, we have a lot of people that supported Hillary Clinton, a lot of people who supported Donald Trump and Gary Johnson. And despite these differences, people always, respected one another, and that's expected. For teachers who want to set up a space to debate, talk about, engage, run voter registration drives, as some of our chapters have done. We have an expansion department that is always, looking to call people and is trying to email out and recruit people. We provide some resources to sort of set up your own chapter that engages with your community. One of our chapters in Francis Lewis, New York, and also in Cheshire, they did this, was they ran an Know Your Rights seminar with the ACLU on immigrant rights. And so it brings in a lot of students and just anyone really in the community, and it's all civil, and that's one of the best things I like about JSA, that it's not just people speaking out and attacking each other. It's adding to a productive conversation about how we address the policy issues that we're facing today. So JSA is always looking to recruit and expand and sort of bring more people into our democracy so that they can meet together.
Patrick and I are also part of a class called Critical Issues. So during the past municipal election, we focused on Orange, Connecticut, because part of we are Bethany Orange Woodbridge, and Orange had won this past year. They invited the political candidates for the municipal election into the classroom, where we got to hear all sides from the different candidates and ask them questions, kind of like a mini debate, but just students on politicians and the candidates. And so I would recommend doing that in other schools as well, maybe even on a larger scale with the whole school or the students who are interested in learning, because it's a really great way for us to meet the candidates and get their information, then get involved in their campaign. So I think reaching out to your local communities, the local government, the local parties is a great way to bring that discussion and get out there into the community and get yourself involved.
How about if a teacher wanted to connect with local civic organizations, wanted to connect somehow? I want my kids to be involved in local issues, but I don't know how to go about that. Would anybody have any hints on that? How to do that?
JSA, while it is student run, it does have teacher advisors. So whenever I've gone to a place that wanted to become civically involved, what they've typically done is research local civic organizations. So while I am from JSA, there's a lot of other places that you can go to. There's lots of local Rotary clubs and American Legion organizations that are great at sort of getting people involved. It's a great way to, donate back to your community and sort of contribute to that. If you want resources on how to start a civics-based organization, if you go to www.jsa.org, there's a lot of resources on there about how you can go about it, and I have a lot of things on me, flyers and stuff, that I hope to distribute after if you'd like to sort of start on this course.
Would it be fair to say that you're an advocate for JSA?
I'm a little biased on it, yeah. So as a senator, I was elected to represent Connecticut and New York, and so I'm very proud of the work that my state has done and all the delegates. So I'm always looking to sort of bring more people into our family, and so because it's been transformative for me, and I know it will be transformative for countless others.
Could I ask, does anyone in the audience have a question or an addition to anything that we're saying here? Would anyone like to add anything in?
I think hearing more from Patrick regarding the diversity of the GSA involvement of students. Is there a good distribution of Black, brown, Latinos, and Caucasians involved in this effort? And what have you done intentionally to bring in more diversity?
So something that is really really interesting about JSA is that not only is it politically diverse, but it's also racially, religiously, ethnically diverse. We elected not our first, but I think our third Asian American governor in the Northeast. Across the country, it's a very diverse thing. So we have chapters in also socioeconomic, in a socioeconomic diversity way. So we have chapters in the Connecticut Valley, we have chapters in the Bronx, in New Rochelle, a couple in Westchester County, in Hartford, New York. We have some in the suburbs of Hartford, so it's spread out. We have a lot of people of different backgrounds who serve in leadership roles. We have a racially balanced cabinet, which is one of the initiatives that our governor drove this year. So it's balanced in both gender and race to include all people from all backgrounds, which is something that I think is really amazing about JSA. Is it's not just political, it's also trying to include everyone so everyone has a voice.
What, by the way, I found interesting is there's a lot of high school students that I know, and this is very frustrating to some folks in the political world, that I would call them deeply, deeply engaged in community issues, that they're working in soup kitchens and doing things like this, but that they're utterly disdainful of traditional political activity. That, when people from parties get their names in call, and they're largely not interested. So I think a trend is, and again, this is perhaps frustrating to some people in the political world, that there are kids, and probably this has always been true, but that there's kids that are active, but not in quote unquote traditional political ways. And you know what? To me, they're active. I would have no criticism whatsoever of that. Please.
But that's a beautiful thing, because the political system we have is, like fast running towards collusion and just destruction. It doesn't work. We need to find a formula. But the reason I raised my hand is to have a question for the three students who actually in the chapter. Each of you enumerated a variety of organizations you're involved with and community involvement and participation. And I'm just wondering if at your respective schools or wherever you go that there are students your age, if you notice that they take on like the life, for lack of a better way to put it, that each of you live. Like are there kids that you're the role models for and have you on the shoulder and said, how do I do with you?
Well, that's something that, like, I enjoy. I take pride in. I'm the president of the student council, so in essence, I like to think that I'm like the face of the school. I organize every spirit event. I do every spirit day. Everything, any fundraising effort goes through me, and we work together. And we do that, bring people together. So I like to think that, the work that I do hopefully inspires some other people who want to do that, because that's really what it's about for me. Is I have all my interest in doing what I do is that I'm going to use whatever knowledge I have, whatever abilities I have, whether I be a good organizer, good speaker, whatever it is, to kind of give people that hope, like, oh my God, I can do that. Never before this year have we done any major fundraising effort. This year we did two, raised over $3,000. It's outstanding because we're not a huge school, and we've never done anything like that. And I want to prove to people not only that they can do what they want to, but I also want to prove to adults who constantly think that they want to be the source of learning for children, that sometimes you can learn from children too. Sometimes we can be that inspiration, and that's kind of been my big part this year. It's like, I want to prove to this community that my school is very, very capable of proving something good that we can do together eventually,
At AMP, I've always, when I first came to high school, I saw myself as a small fish in a big pond, like a small girl, shy, and everything. And then as I've evolved and joined more and more things, I've seen myself grow, and that big pond that seems so huge becomes smaller. So I have to give it to people that I look up to, not only in athletics, but in political and community involvement. I've seen my brother go through being a part of Model UN, And so I did not join modeling, but it got me involved in politics, and I looked up to him, and now I have people who look up to me, not for just being a part of National Honor Society or being a role model in BBYO, but also being a role model for women in my school, because as being the first female wrestler, I've had more girls try out for the team, and now being the captain, more girls have tried out for the team, and at first I was like, I kind of like being the only girl on the team, it's kind of cool, but then last year another girl joined the team, and now she's one of my best friends, and she always tells people how much she looks up to me, and how much of a role model I am to her, and it is one of the best feelings in the world. So to go from looking up to people and feeling like a small fish to now being 4 years later, being a senior and now being a big fish, and having those people look up to you, it's amazing, and I just love it.
One of the people who got me involved with JSA and actually enjoy it, so I got pushed to go by a couple of friends. And so when I arrived at my first convention, I met a guy named Untitled, and he's from Cheshire High School. And he was just a really amazing guy, and he's a leader in JSA now. So he's above me, but so he inspired me to like keep coming back, because I wasn't a fan of public speaking or even politics as a freshman. Now I really love it, and I really thank him for that. And so there's a lot of people in my school who, because they've seen the stuff that I've helped organize as vice mayor, they've decided to take active leadership roles and become logistics agents at our conventions and run things themselves. And so it's almost like they're taking on the torch and they're passing it along down the tree. So I really love that aspect.
And if I could just touch on one more thing, I don't know if you guys have seen that Newington has been in the news quite a bit over the past few weeks. We recently had a pretty town-wide constitutional argument over our volleyball's rights to, I'm going to say this, but I don't want to cause any tension in this room, but right to kneel during the national anthem or not, what issue that was. So what you have to do as a civic leader is find yourself in different adaptive roles. Never did I expect that I was going to be approached by my principal and vice principals to go to the Board of Education and explain these girls' rights, but also to take on members of the Board of Education who had openly and actively disavowed these rights and their rights to do so. So since then I found myself as in a role different from many of my predecessors, that I am to be this, pursuing what is right for my students, and I think that that's been equally as transformative and exciting, is that I can really go before the Board of Education to be invited there by the superintendent to discuss like I said before, what my students face and what their rights are, and how we can work together to make sure that everybody feels included in our community.
Steve, I wanted to say something in response to your saying that young people may be involved in their community but not
Traditional political
activity. I think that just exciting, so exciting to hear what all of you are doing. And I also cannot help but notice the distinction between the kinds of things people are talking about in panels today and how our political system is working right now. And so I would say that my encouragement would be that every time we look at something like the Civic Ambassador pledge, that part of that is how do we transform our democracy so that it reflects the core values that we as a people have. Not that we have all the freedom, but that we embody the ability to talk to each other, govern each other through listening to each other. So for me, I just wanted to say that we're doing so much of the parallel work. Really, how powerful it can be is also used to transform the political system so that we can be a true democracy. So it's not to despair, but to say that we have some work to do. So I wanted to kind of add that.
Thanks an awful lot to the panelists. Very astute comments. Thank you. Thank you for your. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
I got one question. I'm just curious. I don't know if you have a number in your head or whatever, or percentage. Participation from cities like Bridgeport and Maine, as far as inner cities, and what kind of numbers you think there would be as far as participation in your organization?
in terms of New Haven, we've actually had a chapter there in the past,
Okay.
but a lot of the students graduated all at once, so it wasn't sort of staggered age-wise, and so that chapter's collapsed.
Okay.
One of the things with JSA is oftentimes there's going to be sort of lulls in sort of participation, so where it's this one sort of group of people all together, and then they all leave simultaneously, but we have a lot of people that come from New York City. We have a lot of people from Francis Lewis and New Rochelle. And
What about Bristol? That's what I'm curious about. Participation wise.
well, it's a chapter by chapter organization, so we don't have a chapter in Bridgeport yet, but we always call, we call social studies department chairs. We have, every year at our conventions, we have students who have friends from other towns, other cities, we have, give us contact information. And so we have like 16 people that spend a couple weeks out of the year just calling people, cold calls, trying to get people to organize and set up their chapters. And it's work. We have a bunch in upstate New York. We have a couple in Seymour. It's really amazing.
So you guys are putting emphasis on getting more participation out of the industry.
Yes. We're trying to compete with the other civic organizations too. Earlier we talked about it today.
And the reason for that, I'm asking it because now you get more, points of views, and so forth. So, you can't get just one point of view, you gotta have them all in order to come up to some conclusions and ways and solutions for problems. So.
In fairness, sir, this year also for the red, white, and blue program, we're making a conscious effort to get some of the districts that you're talking about involved in that as well. Thanks for your attention. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, so we're now ready for the breakout groups. And while we're doing that stretch, we'll grab some coffee, go to the restroom. We're going to have two groups. Those of you who are younger and really college and high school age, we'll be meeting in room 139, which is the first, I think it's the first room to the right. You'll see the number 139. And Dana Miranda will be moderating that group. Those who are older, in other words, not high school or college, can take seats over there in the back as a group. And
social media, share is that a figure out Yay, here we go. Okay, fantastic. So, now with that said, before we get into that, just like a super quick introduction, tell us who we are,
especially as it's not a presidential election, it's about we just had our municipal election, and it's
the rural line.
no. Oh, I'm keeping better knowledge there, but it's just relatively full.
I was in Florida for a time for college, and I transferred back here, and I moved to and I studied transnational migration. My name is Tina Johnson. I'm from originally, currently reside in stores, Connecticut, State My name is Shayna. I'm a senior at engineering school, and I live in Orange, Connecticut.
I'm Patrick, senior at
Thank you, everyone, for sharing some of your story. Now, this dialogue, for those who missed our session earlier, as a panelist and a moderator, is really about how do we use dialogue and dialogue in this room to identify strong civic life in our communities, and what can we do as whether high school students, college students, as young adults, how can we start envisioning change in our community? So we're just going to go through 3 different dialogue talks. Ariana's going to be a note taker. And then at the end, we're all going to go back to that main room, and we're just going to talk together as a group. So again, we're going to have 10 minutes for each question. And so the first question is, what civic resources and opportunities do you have in your community and or school? So this is about identifying things in your community that actually lead to strong civic life, to not only tell the other participants in the group, but actually to make a So, whoever the Lord.
Yes. So, my school,
had a survey or a feedback with students during a workshop, and we just kind of sat down and kind of just engage students maybe more report card about the school. And there's certain aspects of the school we have been great, and it was really interesting to just listen to what students think of your school. And a lot of them I think it was shut down, so just give out to the rest of the staff and the administration, it's a problem that the students are having. They never really have a place to just come straight out to the administration and we can talk to them, so they can even talk to us, and then we take it to them. And it was really interesting to hear from us.
You know, throw away the old way. We just have to try to do things and see how they work.
So, what's the things that you might contribute to the issues that, for example, when you're in a personal communicating of the racism that was brought up, and believe it or not, especially because of Trump, we find that a lot of people on the forward line, but during campaigning, a lot of people who weren't educated in regards to even family of Puerto Rico, and I had to school, and we are American citizens. So we have to go back even into our schools and changing the curriculum a little bit more, and really educating these people because these were
if there are any civic
that no idea that we were American citizens, that we served in the military since 1917.
half of the records that we share out. That's part of what we share out. Please go ahead and do that. And then the second question.
I just have a comment specific to my community. Right, so our mayor has a civic engagement program with regards to City Hall. And I can't remember it right now, but I think it's, the Citizens Academy. Right, and it's something, I don't know, I might be free, but it's several weeks that the citizens will be ready to go through civic engagement experience. I think every there's such a job.
Steps.
We're the accessibility.
So I would say steps for children that don't.
Yeah, exactly.
So how was that? How was that conversation that you had in groups? Anyone? It was great, right? This conversation you can have in your communities. To talk about civic assets, resources and opportunities that you have, that you can leverage, that you can use working with others. But also can help identify gaps. Where are the gaps? Whether that be in schools or in the neighborhood or in city government or town government. And talking about is really creating a community of engaged citizens and people who are willing to take a step to change those gaps of opportunity. So this conversation really gives us a chance to do that and to think about our role as civic ambassadors to address some of those gaps and to leverage those opportunities. So at this point, I'd like to welcome the two note takers or reporters. And they're going to be reporting on the questions. Number one, what are some civic assets and resources in your communities? Number two, what is your vision for environment, civic culture in your communities and our state? And three, what do you all think your role as civic ambassadors can be to bring that vision to reality? So we're going to start with the first one, civic assets and resources. One of the two groups will be reported. We're used to the library.
Yeah, sorry, Val.
Yes.
We
have two groups.
Being troublemakers that we are.
You have to. I know that.
Two groups. So we have.
Yes, so both the reporters. So let's talk first about. Actually, let's talk about all three: civic assets and resources, your vision for a vibrant civic culture in your communities and our state, and what you think your roles as civic ambassadors can be to bring that vision to reality.
Okay, so in terms of you're saying the most urgent issues that we have. We said that participation is a huge component. We need more actively involved participants to reconsider the way that we vote or how voting works. I'm a teacher. My kids get very frustrated with the electoral college, for example, and democracy. They don't understand, well, the popular vote didn't elect who I wanted, etc. The idea of technology that maybe could allow for voting to be better, but we also address technology in what's a problem with civic life is that a lot of discourse is not is not personal. It's people hiding behind computers and screen names and not actually engaging in seeing somebody's face and their humanity and really investing in what their interests might be and how their interests are similar or relatable. Our first one again, just the idea of humans appreciating also humans just fear change. It's scary. It's so in looking at an old system like we have, it's it's a young country but it's old too. It's something we might need to adjust as a society. And then you want us just to cover, like we need to just go through all three of our so no.
Yeah.
Okay. The second question.
Your vision for
strong civic life would look like? Okay. We just said that it would create conversations in the community that connect us, middle ground. The idea that we would step outside of ourselves and be compassionate. We address technology with how it interfered with personal face-to-face interaction. Strong civic life looks better with more diversity in the society. We could have better ways to get people registered to vote and to, have their voice heard, lessen the barriers, accommodate the community, and just making it more equal and opportunity for all. And then the last one is our role as civic ambassadors. And we said modeling and bringing into practice, living our life and articulating in a positive manner in the world that we live in, being that role model, having an open dialogue, community events that encourage this, listen more, process and digest first, and don't overreact. Support our schools and our educators who are trying to do this. The idea of soft skills versus like test scores and things like that. More parents being engaged, educating others, motivating others to join in the civic ambassador movement. Just remembering in our daily lives all the time that we are ambassadors and living that.
Thank you.
So sometimes we had an idea of what we wanted, but we didn't know exactly how to create that change. We wanted to definitely facilitate more dialogue, have the ability to express our political views without being in a tense environment as they often ended in arguments and fighting. We wanted to see more forms of why we believe what we think and to consolidate similarities over differences. And as students especially, we wanted the ability to actually create administrative change, because that's lacking. As a student civic ambassador, we also wanted to call upon colleges to particularly work with us, as they are often public institutions and have the resources to do so.
I think with high schools or?
Yeah, so like high schools working with colleges. Some civic things we are already a part of is diversity action groups noted, Rotary clubs, student council, peer education groups where students help each other out rather than going to the administration. Human rights studies,
big topic of interest.
Great. All right, thank you. Thank you very much. Great. It's not with the older group.
Majority of us, I believe we're all parents.
The younger.
So the civic resources that are available are resources from the old State House that really made the nice connection with past history to civics and past and present and the relevance of it all, and really taking the commission also opportunities to really implement an academy that really engages families to become civically engaged at many different levels through the Parent Leadership Institute training, the Parent City, the Parent City and Educational Excellence, and using steps in that initiative to ensure that everyone has a positive approach on understanding what civic life should look like in the long run so everyone benefits. One of the pressing pieces that we felt was really critical in today's society is what Southington has taught us through engaging and preventing adults and peers from learning from tragedy. They had experienced forced suicides in Southington, and instead of looking at that as a very bad situation where you can't learn and grow from it, they really started implementing more engagement, a peer-to-peer approach to be more preventative, because sometimes those students that are quiet in our classrooms are those that need most. And then 4, helping to put into context the importance of what national history has taught us along the way, and what are some of the things that we can do with our school systems, with our politicians, and with our students and parents leading the charge. And then last but not least was Connecticut Public Affairs Network, really playing a part in not only educating high school grades and learning more about history, but learning how to put their history and learning into advocacy and mobilization to change the end result for all. And another area that we felt was, an area of growth in order for civic life to really look like a place and space for all people to feel connected to, is really looking at space and time as to how we actually interact with each other on a daily basis, how society plays a role in really making you speak about issues that are really important to you. Don't wait until there's a political situation happening or a tragedy before you actually open that time and space and dialogue. Also having local participation and making it really intentional to build neighborhood association meetings to ensure that not only more people show up to meetings, so we had somebody reflect on their own experience in their communities, that only 4 people show up, and 4 people can start the movement, but it has to continue on. And also the areas of feeling isolated when you speak up and out about situations, calling people in and calling people out on situations, how you're really building that neighborly love and neighborly caring and sharing of information without feeling like you're being penalized or scrutinized by your neighborhoods. And then also the importance of energizing your local governance teams to really know their government and know who's representing their voice at the local level. Even though some people don't like to be affiliated with, I don't like politicians, or if they say I don't like politics, we are all in the politics. We are all part of the construct, and we are all part of the roles of really building systems of change in order for us to really make things happen for ourselves, our children, and our community, and not viewing someone that's involved in politics as a person that's going to be scrutinized or lying about certain issues to get their way, but really being an asset in listening and respectfully disagree on certain things. And then know your neighbor. Take the initiative of being caring and knock on their door to make it happen, because if you wait for things to happen, nobody's going to knock on your door. And then also the lack of believing in the system that says that it's protecting us, but yet the system doesn't hold us back. We talked a great deal about that. And last but not least is don't lose yourself and your identity to promote change as you're working toward this political realm of things. And also be part of the social fabric in weaving into collective action with the collective we. Because the space and places can only be made possible if you end up ensuring that you're civically engaged for all the right reasons. And then, let's see, understanding that parents, although they're their child's first and most influential teacher, there were quite a bit of parents that said that they would be looking at how you compromise on certain areas of communication. Because we felt like, well, some of us felt like compromise is a dirty word in our society. So it's really important to see local and statewide and national works of art really changing the leverage of how we're weaving into our community by really listening to each other's verbal and nonverbal cues and really looking at how you're compromising a little bit of who you are, what you stand for the collective we and the whole to benefit from, versus getting stuck on your view and not really looking at it from the larger picture.
Okay, great. So let's give a quick and we have to be in the room very shortly because it's already 4:30. Before that, I do want to encourage you to check on your packets. There's a thumb drive in your packet that has a lot of resources there, handbooks, discussion guides, every kind of resources you can imagine. As civic ambassador, you can regularly sending information, opportunities. I'm going to be working with some people on my staff to do some webinars. Hopefully we'll do this on the second year summer next year as well. Before we close, I do want to swear in the ambassadors because we have to leave the room very quickly. Before that, I do want to thank, of course, the moderators for the three groups. So at this point, I want to invite the civic ambassadors to stand here, facing me, bring your pledge, which is inside your packet. Okay, bring your pledge. We're going to read it together, so we don't have to do it. We're going to read it together, so please face me, stand with the line like that. All right, so you all have the pledge? Okay, so let's read it together and I'll start. Ready? As the civic ambassador, I pledge to be a dedicated and engaged member of my community who will uphold civic values of civility, respect for democratic institutions, principles of social justice, and non-violent civic action that will improve my community. I further pledge that in every role in which I may hold influence, I will carry forth the message that civic participation is a transformative experience that benefits us as individuals, our communities, and our democracy. I further pledge to devote at least 1 hour a week to working with others across difference to create opportunities for civic participation and engage those